Okie dokie.
Oh.
We
Hello.
cease the top secret.
Is that
top secret cabal conspiring. We have people listening in on our conversation.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
Busted.
Oh god.
Anyways.
Completely busted.
Yeah, busted.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
That happens every week. You know.
Yeah.
We're
I don't know
Nobody is
why-
higher of the guy.
We keep deciding to talk about all this extremely top secret stuff literally right before we go live. Like it's like
We're right about to lay out our new protocols as the elders of our cabal.
Right.
And then
and we do it
people
right
start
before.
listening in.
It's just we really need to work on
I got a
something
really
else.
good idea. We should just have the meeting at a different time. Why don't we just move the meeting?
We should just do that
God.
We
differently,
should
yeah.
have it after Red Planet. We just have the meeting after.
Okay.
That's very smart, Sophie.
Interesting concept. I don't know if it'll stick.
Well,
Who knows?
I'll give it a go.
We're gonna keep this gag running every week.
Anyways,
Okay,
hello
cool.
everyone to Red Planet. Hi chatters. If you are just with us, hanging out with us, welcome back. And for everyone who just tuned in, welcome to the channel and welcome to Red Planet. Today's episode 11, a very, very special, very much hyped, very much very important episode of Red Planet. We'll be talking about DIY HRT. And if you don't know what that means, we will also explain for you. But yeah, I'm very personally very excited for this episode. We will be joined by Keffals later. After we do a little bit, I'm assuming we're going to be talking about a little bit of news. But we'll be joined by Keffals later, who is a Twitch streamer, and we'll probably introduce them probably when they come on. But yeah, friend of mine, fantastic content creator, just all around excellent person. And so yeah, we'll be having a conversation with them. Very, very psyched for it. How is chat doing? And how are, more importantly, let's face it, because we do love hierarchies.
I mean, it's more important, yeah.
More importantly, how are the hosts doing?
I'm gonna I'm still like adjusting myself more because I was just filming a firefighter segment for my new video, like
you look
10
very
minutes
cute.
ago. Thank you.
You
I
very
appreciate
like
that.
aggressively
Thank you,
cute.
But I was like, I had like fake like charcoal smeared all over my face. I had the axe and the everything like 10 minutes
I've
ago.
seen it.
I was running around the house changing.
She looks
If you look
great.
on-
It's
yeah, if you look on
brilliant.
Twitter, you can see it. Yeah,
it's all over Twitter.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's yeah, just a little sneak peek of what we can expect from Soph's
That's exciting.
video coming up. Yeah, it is exciting, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I thought I'm talking about the guys who say BreadTube is CIA. What's the most BreadTube thing I can do? I'll do a philosophy tube character. That'll make them mad as fuck. So let's.
Oh right, yeah. Look, we've got like even like complete strangers in the chat, like Snornat saying aggressively cute. See,
Yeah.
Total strangers agree that I'm I'm cute and hot.
Thank you, kind stranger. Wow.
yeah, amazing.
That's why I like to
Alright,
I like to outsource my compliments to like a third party. That way I know that when people call me cute, I'm like, correct. This has been I see you say source.
Absolutely.
I'm like, here is the source. An independent third party is verified. Many people
I
are
have to
saying
say, chat, do your own research. Snornat is Sophie funded media, and if you look into this, you just gotta follow the money.
Yeah.
How are the lads doing? How are my boys and the co-hosts today? How you doing?
We're doing all right. I'm like double fisting a coffee and a smoothie because I
Holy
haven't
shit.
had breakfast yet because we're a
fucking
little
hardcore.
early. It's all right.
Water.
I just need I need all of the thing, all of the power I can get.
Someone in chat just asked what's BreadTube. Oh no.
It's like
It's a tube. It's a tube. It's made of
It's one of those
bread.
French
You know,
things.
you know when
Watch
you
my
get
video. There'll be a segment explaining it in the video. If
That's
you
right.
They don't know.
British
There's a
people.
baguette.
British people stop
Yep.
saying ch when it's t. It's challenge.
No, actually,
Bread
we invented the
tube.
language. So you know.
Yeah. What's the etymology of tube?
Yeah.
Tube. I think in New Zealand we kind of say both, right? Like I don't know.
Do you actually?
Depends on what kind of New Zealand accent you got. There's like a couple. Like
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you don't
But,
say channel, do you? So you know.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, the English language is full of like ridiculous inconsistencies.
No,
so,
it's
Oh, yeah.
not.
you know.
It is.
I think it is.
It is. If you can spell the word GHOTI, and if you use phonetics in English, it says fish. Think about it. Think about it. So GH is F, like as in cough, right?
This is some shit.
Or trough, right? And then the O is like the O in women, so you can pronounce that as an E sound. And then also the TI at the end is the start of like the suffix shun, so like information, compilation. So you can take the TI.
It is. Yeah. No, it is. It's...
So there you go. GHOTI fish.
And this is why we don't.
So
this is why we don't let
my dad would give me, and I would get mad as fuck when I was a little kid.
Yeah. It's wild, but it's like the more you like learn about other languages, you realize how like just like there's like no internal consistency in English. There's like ridiculous bullshit. Yeah. Even like all the stuff, you know, like I can't remember who it was. Someone brought up a really good point in one of their, you know, another BridTube video or whatever about how like the whole like pronoun discourse is like just not a thing in other languages because, you know, so many other languages don't even have like gendered pronouns. And I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's right. There's no like in Maori, there's no, you know, it's just, and so it's like this isn't even a debate there. It's like, you know, such a symptom of like English culture war bullshit.
Well, it's a colonial white settler thing. It's like trying to put people in boxes, you know, like I chatted with Lost Sue about that a lot, about how it's like, you know, coming into like indigenous lands and being like, no, none of this gender fluidity. You need to be a he or a her, and you know that's it. You know, you have your roles. And it's a totally actually like
imperialist. There's a bunch of like stories about stuff like that. You know, like when and it's like this is kind of like a gross story on one hand, but it is also kind of like, you know, kind of shows the funny kind of side of things where it's like there's like in one of the settlers' journals coming down here was there was some, you know, some guys that show up to some village and they're just like, hey, you know, show us where all the hot babes are at or whatever. And they, you know, they were like, hey, you know, here's some nice young girls. And then they were like, what? These girls have dicks. You know?
No way, that's actually in a
I can't remember who it was, but it's like one of the famous like New Zealand pioneer types or whatever. And everyone was just like,
versus the Chad Maori.
And everyone was just like, what are you talking about?
The virgin settler, oh no, these girls have dicks, versus the Chad Maori. This woman has a penis? Splendid.
Splendid.
Absolutely. Yeah, fuck, I should make a meme of that. But yeah, anyway.
Do the Giga Chad, but give him the like face tattoos.
Can we quickly do a screenshot?
Yeah, I've done it before.
Quickly.
Awesome.
All right,
cool. Screenshot.
Oh shit, yeah, okay.
All right, cool. Am I going to double fist it for a screenshot?
What do I do with my hand? Everyone does hand things. You know what? No hands.
No hands.
Okay,
no
we got
hands?
it.
What?
I got it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Should we talk about news?
We should.
Let's talk.
Should we do it? Should we get newsy?
News. Yeah.
Current
cool.
affairs, things that are happening. All right.
Yeah. So our guest, who will be on shortly, Keffals, raised over $50,000 for trans kids in Texas, which is based as hell, and we'll definitely applaud Keffals some more. The Keffster, the Keff
fun
machine,
claps in the chat for
the
Keffals.
Caffeinator. When they're on later. But the situation in Texas is pretty shit. The situation in Idaho, kind of worse. The situation in Tennessee, also bad. A whole bunch of states have used the Ukraine war as a distraction to push tons of like hyper fascist anti-trans legislature, and we will doubtless talk about that a bit during the show. But the first decisive legal battle has actually been won for trans people because a Texas judge, there's a link to this in the notes if you want to put it on screen, a Texas judge has actually temporarily blocked investigations into parents of trans kids to stop Texas CPS from kidnapping kids from their parents, which is a thing that I think should be stopped.
Kidnapping is bad.
I think so. I think so.
I mean, I feel like if you like care about the children, you know, I feel like you would be against kidnapping children. But maybe I'm just a crazy communist or something.
Wacky theory. But have you considered 100 million dead iPhone Vuvuzela? So there is that.
Now that you bring it up.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
And this injunction is really important, and it's really important that it happens so quickly because the way these fuckers work is like It doesn't matter if it's legal. It doesn't matter if it's been officially ruled that they will go and kidnap as many kids as they possibly can until someone says stop. And so the fact that someone said stop very quickly is very good news for the people in Texas, but then there's still other states. So like I say, we'll talk about it more, but shit's going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I have so much to say about this. It's like
there's
like endless things to say about this. There's endless directions to take this. But yeah, this is just one thing I want to say that is not directly pertaining to trans, but it's pertaining to what the ripple effects of this is. Chat, everyone needs to know that if you're not trans, this is not like, and by the way, if things don't affect you personally and it affects marginalized people, you should still care. So I'm never going to try to like logic somebody into caring. Like, well, it might affect you one day. You should care because you care about marginalized people, because that's the whole point of us being here, is to stop oppression and to build like humanity, to build community, to honestly, like, I hate to say it, but kind of like build like a love centric like kind of like society where we actually like care about each other. So that's that. But I will say that also the ripple effects of things like this, it does actually affect people outside of just trans people, or the people that are getting reprimanded for not outing trans people or outing the families that have trans people. Because I'm seeing now that there's also legislation that's trying to be pushed. I forget what state it is, but like anti-abortion legislation. Which state was that tried to make it? Or
Chad, that is Texas.
Was it Texas?
Well, that is Texas. Yeah, I mean they've been trying to do that for a long time anyway. But I mean,
but yeah, you see what I mean,
these
right?
things do just go hand in hand. Yeah,
exactly.
It's always been that way. We see Texas pioneering a lot of new fascist legislation, and they definitely try exactly the same stuff that they are doing. For the other as well, and it goes both. It does go both ways. Like, I think I've seen people offer both takes. Like, if you see this happening with trans people, it'll be abortion next, and if you see this with abortion, it'll be trans people next. I usually see it the former, not the latter, but like I have seen both, and I think the accurate picture is like they're doing both at the same time, and like experimenting in the law to find ways to persecute people. And when they find one that sticks, they use it.
Yeah. They just throwing all the shit at the wall, and they're just like, all right, cool. This is an angle. Like, this is a little crack that we can pry open.
Totally.
Yeah, it's totally bullshit.
Is it amazing that the anti-abortion stuff is also think of the children? It's all based on this like fake caring about children in order to control marginalized people's bodies.
Yeah, it's children and families, right? Like.
We care about families. That's why we're ending your right to an abortion, even in the case of ectopic pregnancy, which is like kills people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, they just have no idea about what any of that means. But it's the same thing. It's like, we just want to protect families and children, so we're going to tear apart families and try and prosecute parents for helping their children and shit.
Right.
It's like, whose families, whose children, who are you protecting here?
Right.
But and it's like, it's always run on these these imagined cases, like, imagine if a parent did this, so to stop them from doing that, we're gonna just fucking destroy the rights of an entire group of people. It's
I've been unbelievably deep in the conspiracy hole for all of this, so throughout any discussion I'm just like, well, you have to remember they are keeping these babies alive, and they do that so that they can take the organs, and they're keeping the babies alive and viable, and you're not a human being legally. That's how they get around it. You're actually not until the ethics board approves you.
That's right,
Sophie. You can't just do that. You can't just start doing impressions.
Well, actually,
she can and she should. She can and she should.
That is true. God damn it.
But positive news, because that's what I feel like we try and focus on, showing the wins.
So that was
fuck Greg Abbott's in the chat real fast.
Yeah.
Greg Abbott. Absolutely.
You're allowed to say
the district judge, Amy Clark Meacham, the one that overturned it. She said that there's like a pretty good chance that they completely overturn it, completely, get rid of this thing, and that the directive put forward by Abbott was just like, it it has the effect of a law or like a bunch of laws, but without actually introducing any kind of legislation or, you know, like any kind of policy or anything like that, which is like, you know, that's when, you know, something like, you know, like that's when this guy is literally like, well, what did they say in the thing? It's like, yeah, encroached on the legislative arm of the government. So it's kind of like, you know, like an individual person, like, you know, this guy, Greg Abbott, is taking on the role of government in like kind of creating like a loophole to create a law sort of thing without actually having to create a law.
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah, because it was just a directive basically.
Trump
like it was
for the kids in cages. Trump did that. He basically just interprets stuff like differently.
Yeah, we'll almost definitely get into this more later in the episode. And so we should get onto the other news article we have. But, I actually did a stream covering this, so if people are curious about my coverage of when, not the positive news, but when it happened, I did a stream covering
the negative news.
Yeah, like the decision. I'm still meaning to do a separate stream where I kind of get together with some other trans people and talk through like everything that's happened, including the overturning. But I definitely did talk a lot about that, like the way that he just used this interpretation essentially as a de facto law. But who added the thing about Minneapolis? I think that's really interesting.
I did. Yeah, so this is interesting. So, there's a link in the thing. I don't know if bring it up here, but it's so it's from local news. Minneapolis says, Day 3, Minneapolis educators march while parent union calls on strike to end, which is like interesting, right? So it's like already in that headline. There's, you know, Minneapolis educators march. Yeah, okay, so we'll get into that. So while parent union calls on strike to end, I think it's interesting that it's like, you know, educators marching and then parent union, the way that they've phrased that. So it's like, you know, it is like the teachers union, well, the education union, and then the parent union, which is like, so parent unions are a thing that have popped up since the start of COVID. And there's different ones and they all kind of do different things or whatever. There's, so this is the MNPU, I think. Whereas there's like the NPU, the National Parents Union, was the big one that started up, and that's like an umbrella one for like a bunch of different things. That is like has been investigated by people, and it's like kind of this thing where it's like a police union. It's not actually a union, and it's, you know, like they seem to be a lot more kind of sus than they let on. There's like heaps of stuff like. It's, you know, like the NPU, which is like, you know, the biggest separate one, that is their main focus is getting kids back in school and all this kind of shit like that. And it seems like this Minneapolis one has a focus on the same kind of thing. Their whole thing is the students' education first. So they're like, we need these kids back in school. We need them, you know, learning. We don't want to disrupt their childhood, their education. This Parents Union does support other stuff, like they do you know, like help parents get their kids into schools and all this kind of stuff. But I think that it's really interesting when we look at these two as, you know, like an educators union. So I think it's this one in particular is the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers. So they are looking for, like, they're overworked, they want smaller class sizes, and they even, like, they particularly call out in their statement, they're saying the economy is rigged in favor of the wealthiest corporations, which is in part leading to underfunded schools. So this is cool because it's like, we talked about this in an earlier thing about how some unions will be like, oh, we just want better conditions for our workers, whereas other unions looking at the bigger picture and they're saying like, no, this is a systemic thing, you know, like this whole the game is rigged, you know, sort of thing. And so I think it's really interesting that that's, you know, where these guys are coming from.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, like, look at what, like the, you know, the district superintendent for these schools is making versus what the teachers are making, or they call them ESPs, education support professionals. And they're like, you know, like all this kind of stuff, you know, and they're saying, you know, there's like these huge like surpluses that don't get spent because they're like, you know, too concerned with having money in the bank instead of actually paying the teachers, all this kind of stuff. And yeah. And so the president of the MFT, the Federation of Teachers, has said, like, you know, the district is dug in like purely for ideological reasons. You know?
Of course.
And, and they've, you know, complete control and all this kind of stuff. But then the parents union is coming and being like, this strike is disrupting our children, their education or whatever, so we need to get you back to work so our children can get back in schools. And so they're framing it like this whole, like, with the way it's framed. And I mean, like, for these parents, I'm sure it makes sense. They're like, we need to be able to work, our kids need to learn or whatever like that. And so it's like, instead of being like, oh, okay, no, we should support these teachers to get what they want so they get back to school. Instead, they, like, become an adversarial group sort of thing. So it's like, you can see where it's like, there's no, like...
Yeah, I mean, we had a similar thing in the UK during when the pandemic was, I mean, still, like, just fully in the swing of it. Tony Blair came out in support of it because he's a fucking ghoul who should be in jail. Which was just like, we should send the kids back to the school. And it was just like, well, no, you fucking shouldn't. Like, everyone will get coronavirus. And obviously they did. But, like, it was a really weird thing because, like, I sympathize with, there were a lot of parents, my brother's an example, we've got 2 kids, and, like, a lot of parents who are saying, like, well, our kids aren't getting educated because they're just stuck at home and they don't have any contact hours with teachers. And, like, obviously the solution to that is to fund way better programs to be able to teach kids at home safely during the pandemic, like other countries did. But instead, like, obviously the ruling class solution is, if we can take your kids away, if we can get your kids back in school, then you have no excuse not to go back to work. And it was really obviously they were just, I mean, it's a horrifying thing. Speaking of, like, think of the children or saving the children, like, it's taking the kids hostage to make them to make the workforce go back.
Put them into, like, a potentially, dangerous situation. I mean, like, aside from just normal American school danger, but, like, like, actually putting them back in the middle of a pandemic sort of thing, But I thought it was interesting. So it's like, so the Federation of Teachers, they're providing, like, their statement is kind of like, like, they're talking about class, they're talking about systems and things like that. And I think if the Minnesota Parent Union really, like, if they, like, because they're kind of more like this kind of like liberal union or whatever, if they actually kind of dug into it, they would see that their class interests are aligned with the teachers, and they could probably work together. But the interesting thing is that the parent union, their statements are full of things like, they're saying, the teachers unions actions are harming our children, our families, and they particularly call out, and they're disproportionately affecting students and families of color and things like that. So they're really pulling on, like, a lot of the kind of, like, IDPOL kind of stuff, which is interesting because it's like, okay, so we've got these 2 adversarial, like, unions or whatever, one providing systemic analysis and then one going for the liberal IDPOL angle. But the fucking, like, the newspapers and the media are like, yes, they're like, like, look how this teachers union is oppressing these people of color,
I love
and it's
when
like,
unions oppress people.
yeah. It's just like, oh my god. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's what we like to, talk about a lot. Like, you can't, like, without, like, if you have, like, a union or, like, some kind of, mutual aid group or whatever like that, you've got to be looking at the bigger picture. You got to be looking at the systemic issues. You got to have, and it needs to be tied with some kind of class analysis, things like that.
And people, there are definitely some leftists who go the wrong way, and they basically class reductionism, right? And that they just try and say there are no issues but class issues, and we shouldn't be fighting for anything but communism because like it's just the material that affects all these minorities. And it's like, like, the material effects are the ones that matters, and it's our class interests that are aligned and whatever. But, like, it's like, I just want to give people a warning to not be duped by that kind of language, because, like, trans people need to organize as trans people to change the material effects on our lives. Like, it is material, but, like, it is also, like,
totally. And it's like, what, like, a lot of, there's, like, so the statements from the parents union where they're talking about, like, oh, this affects people of color and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yes, absolutely. And it's like, if you actually look at the bigger picture and stuff, you'll see how, like, what the teachers union are talking about is, like that's the source of all that, that's like that's where that's coming from, sort of thing. And it's like it's kind of annoying because it's like, like they're just like they're picking at the scab on the top instead of looking at like, like what caused the scab, what's happening underneath or whatever. Where I don't know.
I actually realized there's two other things I'd like to talk about in the news here, and they're both to do with stuff that we've interacted with on Twitter through the Red Planet Twitter account. If people want to follow that, it's red_planet_TV. And actually, the first one is about fake unions. So let's have a little chat about that quickly. Bunny, this is the most recent link I put in Shadowy Cabal. So this is an interesting thing. This is local news for me. I live near Lewisham. It's a borough in London. L plus ratio plus British, and it is one of the places where there is a strong presence of London Renters Union already. Nice. And they're doing great work, and I really need to emphasize this, doing great work with people in social housing and people who are public sector renters, people who are renting from the council or renting in social housing, right? And Generation Rent, who sound like they should be really cool and based and be helping out the renters and whatever, are here endorsing a renters union that operates through Lewisham Council, which... So this is what we call a yellow union, which the first yellow unions were set up in France with deliberate coloring of yellow. I need to say, I think this color yellow is incidental. I don't think this is deliberate.
Quite funny how they actually legit did that.
I know, it just walked right into the rake there. But the original yellow unions were set up in France with the color yellow deliberately to drive away from the color red for the labor movement and trade unionism. And basically a yellow union is anything from like police unions to things that are like a union set up by a company so that like employees can have their concerns heard by the company union, and it's like fuck off. Like this is
kind of like a weird like union HR department.
I was going to say it's like it's
meant
glorified
to co-opt
HR.
People's. Well, I think in a huge way, if you look into the history of HR actually just came out of yellow unions. Like HR is as much an attempt to co-opt struggles for a better work environment as yellow unions are, and the yellow unions are a little bit more sinister because they try and co-opt people's solidarity as well. So this is, like I'm saying, this is really interesting. So like London Renters Union is already there and already doing incredible work for every renter, and then this is Lewisham Council wants to work with private renters to support a local private renters union, right? So only people who are renting private. So in other words, renting renting much more expensive apartments on average. Like it's not always going to be the case, but on average. And that was just fucking laughable. And if you go in the other quote tweets of that Generation Rent tweet, Lewisham Labour actually quoted it themselves, and this is we have to remember this is Labour under Starmer, right? So this is Blairite right wing Labour, and they said, here we go, this is Lewisham Labour values in action. And I completely agree.
Of course it is.
A fake organization fucking propped up to co-opt the working class solidarity and trade on the credibility of real trade unionism. Yeah, that is actually Labour's values in action. Good fucking job. So that was something, I thought that was an interesting kind of similar example to what you're talking about, Tim. But I just wanted to say, shout out London Renters Union. It's a great organization, and it's a real union who actually help people.
And that's something that everybody in chat needs to be looking out for. If you've still not joined a union and you're looking for a union to join, be very mindful that there are going to be attempts like this as unions get more and more popular, which it appears, if anything that we've been covering is to go by, is the case. Then we're going to start seeing more and more of this stuff popping up. So just be incredibly mindful.
And if you have any questions,
I think Tim's thing about Minneapolis shows that that's the case right now. Like the people are literally doing that right now.
And if any of you have any questions in the chat about like, is this union a good union or not, feel free to @ the Red Planet Twitter and like reach out to us. Y'all could reach out to us way more if you have questions. Like a lot
we're
of
very
you
online.
Ask me. Yeah, we're very online. A lot of you come to my stream and you'll ask me directly. And sometimes I'm not the best person to ask because honestly, a lot of I think the rest of the hosts are far more educated in a lot of these things than I am. So ask the Red Planet Twitter. And I feel like that's probably the best way to go about it because I know a lot of you have a lot of questions. So
it's also really good because and this is actually going to blend well into what we're going to talk about today. It's also really good because you're then getting in touch with us, and what we really want is feedback, not just like constructive criticism on the show, but we really want to hear from you. And when we're telling you to go out and get involved with stuff, go and get into organizations and tell us about that, it's because we want to talk about it on the show. Like if you're doing something fucking based, we would totally have you on. Like if you're a chatter and you want to like hang with us and chat about something cool you're doing, that's totally a possibility. And similarly, if you're like looking to join a union and you come across something and you're like, oh, this is a bit iffy, I'm not sure what this is, and you tag us, we might talk about it on the show and use it as a teachable moment and a learning opportunity. So it helps more people than just you if you contact us and let us know about something.
And I think also like if you're doing something that's cool and like it's like just getting off the ground or whatever, and you just like and it's like obviously like aligned with the values that we have on the show or whatever like that, and you just want to come on and talk to us about it and we talk to you and stuff, that's also really good if you're like an org getting off the ground or whatever. So if people ask you what you're about, you can be like, hey, look, well, we went on this thing and we talked about this, blah blah blah, whatever. You can like learn a little bit about what we're about or whatever. So it'd be fun. It's a great time.
And the final piece of news I have is the next tweet up, the previous one I sent to the group. Sisters Uncut have actually taken an interesting step. So Sisters Uncut, for those who aren't aware, is an organization that I don't know if they existed before. I'm pretty sure they did, but they did a lot of organizing around the murder of Sarah Everard, which is a hugely well-known and sensationalized event that happened in the UK. A woman called Sarah Everard was killed by a police officer called Wayne Couzens, who kidnapped her, used police powers to do it. He used police handcuffs, and he basically like made out like he was arresting her, and then he horrifyingly murdered her. And Sisters Uncut has done a lot of like feminist organizing towards trying to make women in the UK more safe. And they're actually, they're an intersectional group. They acknowledge that affects women of color more. They've done a lot of training around making trans women feel safe as well, which is really important in the UK. And then part of the response was that like when Sisters Uncut organized a vigil for Sarah Everard, the police like cracked down on it hugely and like beat the shit out of loads of people and arrested loads of people. And it was a big thing. And one positive piece of news is that has been now finally, which is very rare for the Met Police, been ruled as they actually were breaking the law and really fucked up there. So yay, accountability. But this is the news that I care about much more, that I want to talk about. Withdraw consent today, sign up to join a Cop Watch group now. So Sisters Uncut is branching out into Cop Watch networks, which is something I would love to do a whole episode about sometime. Let's put that on the schedule.
Yeah, we should.
Cop Watch networks are a really huge step towards police abolition. Because, before there were cops, people just took care of their neighborhoods and their communities together. And now there are cops, and those cops are fucking kidnapping and murdering people, or just beating the shit out of people when they're protesting the cops murdering people and shit like this. And so now we have to keep our neighborhoods safe from cops, but we can take that opportunity and we can make it a way that we, build a new kind of policing, a new kind of justice, community justice, and we keep our neighborhood safe from cops as a stepping stone to keeping our neighborhood safe and not needing cops anymore and getting rid of cops. So I'd love to talk about that. And if people in the UK wanna get involved, the link is available there on Sisters Uncut's Twitter.
Yeah, I put it in this chat. And also Chloe says, big shout out to the OG Black Panther Party, which got its start as a cop watch.
Oh yeah.
They had to do a lot of that. And then there comes all the criticisms of like, you're holding guns, doesn't that make you violent? It's like, oh my god. really. Angela Davis has a great we've watched it a million times in my stream. Angela Davis speaks to this very succinctly to this accusation of violence.
She's doing a talk in London today, actually.
For real?
Sick. That's awesome.
Yeah. She's so cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Right,
I think that's news.
What time is it? Okay, cool. Well, so
thanks, B-Rats.
Do we want to
nice.
do a little bit of talk about what we're gonna talk about today before we bring in our lovely guest?
Let me read a little bit of what I've written here. I hadn't actually finished it. Like I said, I was running around with a headless chicken right before the stream. But for trans people, the last 20 years have been a process of trading safety for visibility. As cis people have become more aware of us, they've made their hatred known in numerous ways. Physical violence, systemic violence, discrimination, culture war scapegoating, and, of course, medical gatekeeping. Many trans people, however, are turning to self-medicating as their way around the gatekeeping of the cis medical system. That's where my writing runs out. This rest of it will be improvised. I'm already fucking it up, as you can tell. That's what we're talking about today, is people self-medicating. This is completely in line with the point of our show, which is that people are going to turn to illegal and uncivil resistances to the systems that are killing them. And the big comparison throughout this episode is going to be with unregulated abortion. Because, and I use the term unregulated, not unsafe, not back alley. It's just unregulated. And it's very much the same situation here. We're going to be talking about DIYing, which is the practice of self-medicating hormone replacement therapy for trans people. And it doesn't just mean so in the trans community, it's generally used to mean one thing, which is buying hormones through gray market websites and then self-medicating. However, I want to point out very early on that trans people actually like share their HRT all the time. Just like you're waiting for your doctor to approve this prescription refill. Your friend happens to have the same medication that you're on and a little bit of it left over, so they give you it. You know, it's like it's no big deal. Everybody does it who knows someone who's on the same medication as them, and trans people know a lot of people who are on the same medication as them. So it's actually very natural.
I know
thing.
people that do this with their their ADHD medication.
Yeah,
it's like the same thing, right? Like,
I've had someone we were hanging out, and I was just feeling a bit anxious being in this cafe with a lot of people around, kind of post-pandemic, and she was just like, "Hey, do you want an anti-anxiety med? I don't take those." Like, and it was just I thought it was a very nice offer, you know. But I don't want to. But though I'm being dismissive of the dangers of self-medicating, and though I will kind of continue to be throughout this because it's really important that we tackle some myths, I want to be clear that we are not here to offer medical advice. We will not be offering medical advice. We will be talking about the ways that more safe medical advice and information should be spread and could be spread to make people safer. But we are not a medical advice outlet, and none of us are medical professionals as far as I'm aware. And so we are not doing that. We are reporting on a way that people are reacting. We are reporting on a way that people are reacting to an oppressive system that is killing people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I thought that was pretty succinct, Soph. I think that's pretty
well, thanks.
Yeah, self-explanatory. It is one of those as well. It's like, you know, you will speak to some people and they will be like vehemently against this, like I told you. So like there's someone who's incredibly not okay with me asking for information.
Do you remember what it was they said?
I could bring it up if you like. Hold up a second. Let's have a go. Okay,
that's the thing that's funny, because it's mostly, I think, only known about in the trans community, which means that the people who are then against it are mostly trans people themselves, because it's like older trans people who are like, no, don't do that. That's dangerous.
Yeah. So basically, the person, obviously, I'm not going to name this person because it's not fair. You know, they're completely within their right to say this, but basically said to me, no, as it is illegal and extremely dangerous. Hormones are nothing to play around with. Why do you ask?
So, well, because of course, as we all know, the law is the arbiter of morality and safety.
That's right.
But I say older trans people specifically because it does tend to be an issue of like older trans people who are against it, and that's not to say there's an issue here to do with transition where some people say that like your trans age kind of resets when you come out, like you're effectively a teenager when you come out because like you're starting your life over in many regards. So I'm not just saying older as in someone who is 50 or something. I'm talking about older like they've been out for a long time. Like it's often those people who are more likely to be against it. And a big part of the reason is exactly what I talked about in the intro. The last 20 years have been a huge shift, and I'm certain Keffals will have loads to say about this as well, has been a huge shift in the visibility of trans people. And this is also a pattern we're going to talk about because we're about to talk about all around the world. This is actually something very exciting I'll mention in a sec. This is a pattern you can see still going on. People are not aware of trans people, and then they become aware of trans people, and then the pitchforks come out, right? And then all the gatekeeping starts happening. And while people are unaware of trans people, but doctors are just about aware, actually trans people at the moment tend to have like some of the easiest, cheapest, safest routes of healthcare in those places because they can go to the doctor and just quietly have their healthcare sorted. And a lot of people talk about this as having like they had their transition care all sorted 20 years ago, and it was fine. And they're looking at the situation for people now, and they're like, how the fuck has it gotten this much worse?
Interesting.
Before we because I think it's a good time to eventually, like the next 5 minutes, bring Keffals on. But before we jump into that, I want to thank Keffals for the sub for 11 months. That was an hour ago. Ghost, thank you for gifting sub to M Pirate. Tale of Two Rabbit, thank you for the 200 bits. You're wonderful. Thank you. Vic, thanks for giving sub to Dionychus Turbo Laser, and Dumb Marf, thank you for the Prime sub. I appreciate it. And also I'm going to read your comments because it's directly relevant to the conversation we're having. Let's see, where is it? Uh-oh, did I lose it? Give me a second. Where is it? Crap.
Well, let me just say in this moment, I do want my co-hosts, sis though you unfortunately are,
I'm sorry,
to absolutely like join in today. Like I'm definitely I got a lot of notes, and I'm gonna be like blasting you with all my stuff to say,
DIYing alongside all of you.
That's right.
I'm looking forward to this.
You should also take hormones with me. Please do like engage with the like ask questions. Like I definitely want to make sure there's a general understanding around, because part of the reason I wanted to do this reporting for so long, we've been planning this for weeks and weeks, and part of the reason this is so important to me is that I think people really need to have a good understanding of what's going on here. And so I don't want anybody to be left out and be in any doubt about anything. So I'll answer everything to the best of my ability.
Thank you for that, Sophie.
Appreciate you.
So Dumb Marf says, I came here to say that I'm starting self-med HRT next week, and not gonna lie, it's exciting, and I'm shitless scared. So yeah, I'm glad you're here for this episode. And thank you once again for the sub. I appreciate it. And welcome.
And good for you.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. Woe be the hosts who cis yet remain. Indeed. And and by the way, I will say I am a sissy saying this, but I will say that cis people being involved in the conversation doesn't mean taking over the conversation or dictating the conversation or trying to take the position of authority in the conversation. Sometimes it's a hard one for us.
Like,
Tim,
damn, I was about to do that.
Oh wow, she didn't.
I was so ready to assume authority. Like, I love doing that. It's my thing.
We had this argument a lot in my chat when like it's like a thing. So.
About me?
We talk about, I'm like, God damn it, Tim. We have our Tim hour. We just talk about how much that can't let him get away with this anymore.
Oh,
are there more subs or anything, or should we bring in Keff?
We're good. Yeah.
The Keffster.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, let's bring her in.
Keffals.
Oh shit. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Oh wait, do we have our camera? Do you have the camera set up by any chance? Did you see the link that
I joined.
Yeah, she's here. Yeah, she's in. Yep.
They're in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
All right. I mean, I would assume that everyone probably already know that everyone's watching probably already knows who you are, but like I don't know, you want to give a little intro?
I can't figure out stuff. Give me a second, actually.
Hello.
Oh wait.
Okay, hold on. Yeah,
actually, you know what? I think it's my side.
Is it even Red Planet if we're not having technical issues when the guest joins?
I know we've had like 10 already.
Yeah.
All right.
Is my mic okay?
Oh, you sound great to me.
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, cool.
I feel like y'all are being a bunch of haters. I'm not gonna lie. There we go. Okay, perfect. I'm sorry.
Brilliant.
All right.
Oh my god, Keffals, you look really good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Damn, you look like the cover of New York Magazine.
Okay.
Oh my god, that was so funny.
Wait, what's
I just saw that. It's like so sick.
That's so weird.
Keffals has got a twin.
Oh,
the
Ukrainian woman on the cover of New York Magazine has an uncanny resemblance to me.
Oh. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Same camo uniform and gun and everything. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we get too far into this, let's take a quick screenshot. So everyone pose.
Oh, just before you do, before you do, Keffals,
get your gun out.
Wait,
I am using she/her pronouns.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I was using they them for a while, and I've changed my mind.
I am so sorry about that. I did not know.
No, it's totally
okay.
okay.
Change to happen.
I don't know.
Oh.
Sometime like the last month, I was
okay.
Just
so it's not like super old change, and I'm like completely behind. Okay.
Yeah, I was like testing it out for a while, and then I had to keep correct. It's harder to get people to respect gender neutral pronouns than it is to get people to respect she/her. And I realized it doesn't make me upset enough that I want to constantly advocate for it. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna use she/her.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That sucks.
But
I get it.
Yeah, it does suck.
Yeah. I've just considered toying around with they them just to see, and I'm like, but I don't know if I have it in me to like fight that fight and like you know what I mean. So it's yeah.
That's wild because I mean like I feel like you gotta fight in spirit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm tired. I'm just like not another thing. You know.
Okay.
Depends what you're fighting about. Yeah.
Are we doing a screenshot?
Should we pose for a screenshot for Twitter?
All right, everyone.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Okay. Yay, we pose. I hope chat pose too.
Chat did not.
Do it. Chloe wants me to do it. Oh my god, Chloe, I don't know. All right.
Did you want to introduce? Did you introduce yourself, Keffals?
Yeah.
Now that you're here.
I'm Keffals. I'm a trans woman. I'm a Twitch streamer. Lately, I've been covering like a lot of news, like a lot of the legislative battles happening in the United States, specifically around trans youth. So I've been covering like Texas and Idaho and Florida and all of these states that have anti-trans bills like almost every day. It's been kind of exhausting, but I feel like it's important to do. Like for a lot of politics streams, it's like one thing and they talk about it for a couple hours and then it's over, when it's this long ongoing thing that you can cover for hours and hours and hours. It's just not as good for clicks.
There's absolutely a war on trans people going on right now, and that's a huge part of why I wanted to have you on as the guest. Because like you don't have experience DIYing. I asked about this, but like
I don't.
But you have been doing some of the best coverage of the war on trans people in America right now, and kind of between that and my knowledge of cursed Turf Island, I feel like we'll have a pretty good background of discussion about the attacks on trans people.
It's really scary. I'm not American. I'm Canadian, and it's like I have Turf Island over there, and I have the U.S. over there, and it's like I know it's a matter of time until this starts happening in Canada. So far, there haven't really been any legislative things happening against trans people here. It's mostly just like groups of TERFs organizing protests.
Yeah. It's wild how much of it is such like a fucking British export thing, right? Like it's like down here in New Zealand there was like a bunch of there are a bunch of kind of active kind of TERFy types and various groups or whatever, but they've all been seeded by these like fucking Turf Island groups or whatever. There's like one of like the most active, I would say, probably most active New Zealand TERFs, became like I think she was like the communications manager for the leader of our main opposition party. And it was like this thing where all of a sudden we started seeing these really like fringe talking points people trying to push them into the mainstream, you know? And it totally tanked though. It totally tanked. Like she like went down in approval. I mean, there's like a bunch of other shit as well, but it was pretty unpopular and they all lost their jobs or whatever. But it was like scary kind of seeing this thing where it's like, this is like weird, like mum's net, like bottom of the barrel discourse being like pushed into, like trying to being shoehorned into just mainstream shit.
It's interesting absolutely. That you say that because it's like if you read the transgender issue by Sean Fay, she talks about how the media in the UK regarding trans people sort of pre-2010 was all just this kind of like, oh my god, trans people are this fringe thing that we don't know about. And obviously there was like a lot of humiliating, like really bad articles about like trans people and the trans experience and stuff like that. And I feel like that has kind of evolved to a point, because in Britain I feel like there's this culture where we just like don't talk about anything. Like, no, you don't talk about fucking anything, like anything important. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about, unions or anything like that. And then, so when trans people became more visible, sort of in the 2010s, like, mid 2010s and stuff, then I feel like it was sort of like a perfect sort of, I guess, way for far right ideas about trans people to sort of like just explode. Especially with, and someone else in the chat pointed this out, the funding of anti-trans hate groups by US evangelical groups as well. Absolutely,
that's actually something I want to jump in on. It's really important, because Tim, you were saying like this is these British exports, and absolutely like LGB Alliance have been trying to set up branches all around the world. In particular, like if you look at the way that they're adjusting to different climates, you can pinpoint how much they are obviously like a far right organization and a hate group. Because if you look at like LGB Alliance Poland, for example, LGB Alliance Poland is anti-abortion. Like they're claiming to be a feminist organization fighting for gay rights, and like then they're just like, it's very obvious what they're doing. But yes, no, they're not actually exactly a British export. Like their experiment worked in Britain, so now they're trying to replicate it all around the world. Yeah, exactly. But like it's totally an evangelical American money thing, and totally funded by evangelical Christian American money. It's the Tavistock case, which Kira Bell versus Tavistock, a detransitioner who sued Tavistock, claiming that they pressured her into transitioning. Her lawyer, because she's a TERF, and then like the lawyer that the TERFs kind of, they didn't crowdfund him. They fucking they paid for this expensive fucking lawyer with like Coke money, basically. He's a guy who's fought anti-abortion cases in the States. And then that case was cited in Greg Abbott's interpretation of the Texas child abuse laws, right? Like you can see really clearly how it's like how the one hand washes the other. Like they are just like they've paid for this, they got the results they wanted, and now they're using it to different ends. J.K. Rowling is another great example of how they've used money to gain influence over people who have cultural influence, and more scarily, kind of over people who have political influence, like Liz Truss or whatever.
Oh God, I was just seeing something tangentially related. One of the World Professional Association of Transgender Health Committee chairs is now endorsing gender exploratory therapy, which is like, it's being championed by like Christians to be used as conversion therapy against trans people. It's being mentioned in the anti-trans bills.
So hang on a minute. That's gender exploratory therapy.
Are you sure? Yeah. Have you considered trying just being something else instead? That's what it is. It's not. You should explore your gender more. It's, you should explore the gender we think you have more.
So that's why they called it.
Like, that sounds fine. Exploring your gender, but no.
Yeah, it's actually very alarming. Like, speaking of the war on trans people, because like a few months ago, I absolutely would have pointed to WPATH, the World Professional Association Transgender Healthcare, as like to contrast against Britain. I would have been going like literally when I was talking to my MP, when I was trying to before. I now have to go and have a new appointment with my new MP because my previous one got suspended for racism. Classic British moment. But when I was talking to him before, one of the things I was saying was like, you need to look at the ways that what these people are saying does not line up with WPATH. WPATH is saying the right stuff, and the UK are actually like breaking international guidance on this. And now WPATH are fucking full of TERFs as well, and that's what evangelical money can do. Is get you influence to the point where you can infiltrate all of these organizations. WPATH also, Keffals, I don't know if you saw this, but like were claiming just like actually the opposite of science. Like they were claiming shit like.
What?
That estrogen can turn into testosterone in the body, which is just not true. Like testosterone can turn into estrogen in the body, but they're just like being like endocrinologically just wrong. Like, that's fucked. Like they let.
It makes a lot of sense. Like a really good way to undermine trans people would be to infiltrate these professional bodies. That determine so much about our lives.
No, I mean it's a thing I've commented on before. I don't know if I've said it on the show, but like. Between the doctors that you'll get, between the doctors that you'll get, there are really three kinds. There's transphobes, chasers, and cis doctors who haven't yet realized they're actually trans. And the reason you won't get trans doctors is because they are forcibly pushed out of the industry. I actually got my initial referral, which led to me getting my healthcare through someone who was well known as like the harshest, like following everything to the letter, like gatekeeper of healthcare within the private network I crowdfunded to go through. And they've come out as non-binary since, which I guess like I can kind of understand, like maybe they were like had some kind of complex going on and that's why they were like that. But since they've come out, they're not on the network anymore. They've literally been kicked off because if you're trans, you can't be objective about trans healthcare, can you?
That's wild. Obviously. So even though they were like to the litter doing their job,
that's so stupid.
Yeah,
it's like saying that
Well, I certainly wouldn't expect trans people to be doing the most rigorous forms of research and science into trans healthcare. Oh wait, that's a spoiler for later in this episode. No, they would never do that. Oh wait a second, that's a spoiler for later in my notes. Oh shit. Oh no. Shall we?
Yeah. I saw Ellie Simone in the chat saying that the doctor just got pushed out and she's trans and that caused them to lose their healthcare, which is like so fucked up.
That's the thing that
it's
can
just
happen.
Like really silly though. It's like saying if you've ever had cancer, you're too biased to be an oncologist.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's completely absurd.
Racist against cancer.
I've heard, this is like just secondhand anecdotal, but I have heard that some people are having their like healthcare like really questioned if they have had the same doctor as me like referring them. Like they'll go to the hospital for treatment that is related. Like people are going for their bottom surgery or whatever, and they're having their appointments, and then the people are looking over the notes and they're like, oh, who referred you? Oh, it was Dr. so and so. Well, I don't know, that doesn't exactly. Like so clearly you're just being let in. Yeah,
that's really interesting because it treats being trans as like a political bias, like almost like you like it's not like when Keffals is giving the example of cancer. No one would think that would make any sense because they're like, well, obviously that's ridiculous. But when it comes to being trans, it's still to think that would provide a bias means that being trans is still considered like a political allegiance, like an opinion, like something that you can be convinced in and out of or something. Like it's treating it absolutely like it's not a legitimate thing.
Yeah. It's like, like you would never think about, like, you can imagine, like you have a doctor that has something like, like endometriosis or something, and they go, oh, actually, I have that condition, and maybe we should, maybe this is for you or something like that. It's like, that's so fucking wild, It's like, that's the kind of person that you would ideally want to go see because they have some personal experience.
Yeah.
Right.
So in older editions of like the WPATH standards of care, they had what they called real life experience.
Yeah.
And so like basically before you would be able to start a medical transition, they'd want you to like live full time as the gender you identify as, like come out to like all your coworkers, come out at school, come out to your family.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
And older
and then would they still have the power to like deny your medical transition after that sort of thing? So
yeah, they would if they didn't think it fit enough. Like older still, like you're talking about the classic era of transphobic bullshit, like Silence of the Lambs shit. They really wanted to know that you had you'd had certain like childhood experiences, like of dressing up in your mom's clothes or whatever, and wishing that you could have changed your gender and all this shit. You have to have had that. That's not really the case anymore, but like it used to be like so ridiculously prescriptivist. Like you have to have from day one been like secretly trying on makeup and wearing heels, and then you have to have already been, as Keffals said, like out to everyone for 2 years, and then you can finally get medical treatment.
Which
so
there's They Love Judas in the chat as well, mentioning that that's the rules still in New Zealand, which I have heard from people that they've had to like do that kind of like act or like perform their gender for like a certain period of time or whatever. But we have we have the public health system, which kind of covers like it does cover trans healthcare to an extent, and there's also kind of like a couple of years ago even it was crazy. There is like a public option for what they call gender reassignment surgery or whatever, which is kind of a ridiculous name for the surgery or whatever, but that's GRS is what it's called, like bottom surgery. And so yeah, it used to be something like 30 or 40 years, but now because they kind of allocate different amounts of funding for different kinds of surgeries, and so for GRS or whatever, they just allocated a bunch more a couple years ago, and I think there was only one doctor that was actually one surgeon that was doing it, but now they've got a couple, and also the funding I think also covers surgery.
Oh, that's really cool.
Maybe in Australia or something.
There's only one doctor in Canada.
Yeah, it's fucking wild, right? But so now they can do it.
Until recently, there was only one doctor who did bottom surgery for trans men. Now there are two, but the two guys recently gave someone a vaginectomy who did not want one. Without asking.
You just slip and do that?
What?
Yeah.
And so access to bottom surgery was like completely shut down for a little while, but now that it's back, like I'm hearing from like trans men I know, they're just like, well, I don't want to go to see those guys because they are just doing a horrible medical malpractice. And then everyone else is also stuck in this horrible position. Like they don't want to sue those guys because they're the only guys. Like they're not going to get necessarily replaced by someone better. They might just go and then there'll be no bottom surgery again.
Also, just like the idea of that, like imagine that blowing up in the news and the TERFs getting a hold of it,
I know.
But yeah, I think like at the moment now it's like the wait list has gone down to something like it's like 10, 11 years or something like that, which is like a substantial drop down from what it used to be, but it's still like wild, So like
Christ, that's insane.
Everyone I know that's done it is like just they're just like fuck it, go private and just go like there's like places in Thailand and stuff that are like
that's pretty much what happens.
And that's like not too far from New Zealand. Like it's it's like quite inexpensive to go fly over there or whatever. So it's that thing where it's like
that's
they go like, oh, the public option is there. But...
Did you really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I went to Thailand for sexual reassignment surgery.
The
way it works with the Canadian government is that if you go private, but they deem it medically necessary, you can get them to cover it, but you need to pay out of pocket first. So my family paid out of pocket for me and then got reimbursed.
Your Twitter has been really insightful recently as to your like journey and your transition and stuff, like because I hope you don't mind me saying this, obviously.
Oh no, it's okay.
But like you literally came out to like everyone at the same time, didn't you? Like
yeah.
when you were like, I don't know if you want to talk about that a bit
Oh
more,
yeah.
that's kind of relevant to what
I never really
about.
talked about it that much, but then like with all the stuff going on, it just felt like really personal to me. Like I came out when I started hormones when I was 16 years old. So it's like I was a minor. I didn't have my parents' support. But I knew who I was and I knew what I wanted to do. And I found a doctor that was willing to treat me, even though at the time he was skirting the rules doing it. He eventually did lose his license, but I really thank him for what he did.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. No, I came out to everyone at once by changing my name on Facebook and changing my picture.
Yeah.
Like all my classmates, my extended family.
What?
I was just like,
that's actually awesome.
Yeah, this is easier.
Dr. Helen Weberly, who I actually raised money for Gender GP, which is one of the two private organizations here. She's lost her license as well because of targeting by transphobes. Just like
yeah.
So I want to dive into my notes a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because we actually have a bunch. Because this is the first episode we've had, and I was saying this earlier, and I'm very excited about this, where we got feedback from viewers. It's not like people talking about cool stuff they're doing. Well, I mean, I think it is because they're talking about hormone. They're talking about their own experiences with hormone DIYing. Cool.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about the methodology first. I want to be clear. We put a few call outs for people to share their experiences with us, but because of the issues with the legality, we are keeping everything anonymous. We will be quoting from some of the feedback, but we also I deleted all of the messages on our end once we were done. So even if someone were able to hack our account or whatever, they won't be able to see any of the messages that we have with any of the people who talked about it. And I think we got a really good. I think we got a really, really nice bunch of feedback. And we'll get to that in a minute. And hopefully my co-hosts can read some of the quotes. But I want to say, and I've said this already, but I'll say it again. Up front, DIYing isn't harmless. Just like unregulated abortion, there is, in fact, a risk of death. You could literally develop a serious enough medical issue, you could die. It's a lower risk. It's nothing like having an unregulated anesthetized surgery or unregulated taking abortion pills, right? When I'm making that comparison, I'm not making that comparison to say it's just as dangerous, right? It's the possibility of you developing a blood clot, an issue with your liver, other issues that can arise from hormones. They are much lower risks, and it's also about timescales, right? If you were having an unregulated abortion, the risk would present to you immediately, were something to go wrong. With DIYing, and this is something we're going to talk about throughout the episode today, blood tests are the big thing. If you are able to get regular blood tests and check your hormone levels, you're basically fine, because if you're taking hormones that you reliably know are in fact the hormones that you want, and you're regularly getting blood tests and nothing's being flagged up as dangerous, you don't have bad levels, you're not likely to develop any of the kind of issues. And things like blood clots, that's an issue that you counter by exercising and going out enough and stuff like that. So what I want to focus on is that the risk is there, but the reason I'm making the comparison to unregulated abortion is that the risk is only there because of gatekeeping. So let me explain. I now have a prescription. I get my hormones from my doctor, from my pharmacy, but prescribed by my doctor, and I take them myself. My doctor doesn't fucking put my pills in my mouth. For people who do their shots, some people have to have their get their shots done by a nurse or by a doctor. But you take your own medicine, and then when I'm getting blood tests, I get them done on my own schedule. And at the moment, I'm really behind on getting my most recent blood test. I'm 6 months behind just because I keep on putting shit off and forgetting about it. And I'm presenting the same risk as someone else who is, behind on their blood test if they were DIYing. Like, if I'm taking exactly the same stuff that someone who is DOIing might be taking, I'm behind on my blood test, and the risk is identical, and I have a prescription. So in terms of prescribed versus DIYing, right, the risk only comes from the ability to access blood tests. Now, the problem is blood tests aren't like an informed consent thing here or in most of the world. And what I mean by that is you can't just rock up to your doctor and be like, yo, I want a blood test. I want to check my hormone levels. And they'll give you one free and easy everywhere in the world, right? There are some cases where that can happen, but yeah, like it's not something you can regularly get. And one of the ways that we can advocate for the safety of people who are DIYing is by advocating for blood tests to be available for everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's interesting. I mean, there's like so many reasons why that would be good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I mean, people get blood tests for all sorts of shit. Absolutely. Like, it would be great to get blood tests. They are privately available. Like, there are labs that do private blood testing. But yeah, that's the thing.
Can I ask a question, if it's all right? So when you say DIY HRT, it sounds to me like you're saying medications that are normally prescribed for HRT, but if for whatever reason you're acquiring these same medications outside of that route. Because I was wondering, is that the only form of DIY HRT, or are there other forms? And the reason I ask is because
that's a great question.
The reason I ask is because I've personally looked into. I'm not trans. I don't think I'm trans, but I've looked into hormones for my own
source
thing. So, yeah, I've looked into hormones for being just having hormone stuff. And I've talked about this a lot with my own community. I don't want to go into it too much here, but
I know basically, what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I've looked into it, and I've looked up a lot of papers, and I've seen that like there's herbal teas, or there's types of like things like that have historically been used in many like communities to try to deal with hormonal things. And I don't know if that has any role in DIY HRT as well, or if it's just the prescription or the just meds that are normally prescribed.
Bad Bunny, I love you so much. Thank you for this question. This is wonderful. So that is exactly what I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
DIYing is broadly, when a trans person says DIYing, they are almost always going to be talking about buying through a gray market website. Gray market as opposed to black market, because in a black market website, you and the person you're dealing with and the thing that's going on, all super definitely illegal. Gray market, so it would be black market if you went online and bought LSD. LSD is illegal. The person selling it to you is doing a crime. You're doing a crime. All crime all the time.
Hell yeah.
Gray market, right?
Tim!
It is.
Tim, I can't believe it again.
No, we do not endorse this opinion here at Red
in a gray market site, it might be no, LSD whips. I
was going to say, do you think that DIYing is less fun because it's less illegal than acid?
So gray market, like it's about the supply, right? So like it might be a controlled substance. Testosterone, for example, is a higher level controlled substance than estrogen, but like all prescription medications are controlled substances.
That was one of the arguments they made when we were watching the live stream in court. Like they're like, testosterone is a controlled substance, so we shouldn't give it to kids.
Yeah, fucking
but
transphobes love that
pretty
shit.
easy to, I've heard of people who get testosterone very easily for just like cis men to go get testosterone.
Yeah, cis men get testosterone for other things, right? For like,
shall I blow your cis minds for a second?
Please.
They don't no one gives testosterone to kids because when you're because it's puberty blockers is what they give to trans teens, right? Like it's not even it's a nonsense argument on top of everything else.
This seems to be the trend I've noticed. Is like when you look into it, they're just those things say things like sex change. It's like that's not a thing. Like they're just like
it's the turf line, isn't it? The turf line is like, we don't want to give kids these irreversible, surgeries, and it's like no one is doing that. No one is doing that.
Yeah. So it's like the medication, the puberty blockers are the reversible. They stop the irreversible.
as soon as you come off puberty blockers, you start going through puberty.
I mean, like, you know, like there's an argument we could go like, how about we just give these to anyone that wants them? You know, like regardless, even if they're cis, they might be like, oh, I don't know,
frankly, that would be my position. Honestly, like, I think that we should just informed consent. Anyone who wants anything gets it.
100%.
Honestly, that is my position.
I personally, I think puberty blockers are bad. Actually, hear me out. Hear me out. It's not natural to actually like postpone puberty like that. They should just give them the hormones that they want. Like, I know people who've been on hormone blockers and then they end up having like bone density issues later in their life.
I do think that's a completely valid argument. Honestly, I wouldn't say it as hardline and as certainly as you have, but like I more or less feel the same way. I
think it's like, so what, like puberty blockers can be a way for people to kind of I guess like navigate the existing shitty kind of structures that it is, right? Like, so they can be like
kind of I think for the most part it's more about appeasing the parents than it is about the children.
It does feel like that, to be fair.
But anyway, so when trans people say DIYing, they usually are referring to they've obtained through some kind of source HRT, and they're taking it without a prescription. The thing is, that isn't always gray market sites. I wanted to point this out. I think this is really important to consider. Trans people share their medication all the time, just constantly, and not just exactly the same medication, but like often people will just be like, hey, do you want to try out like doing an estrogen shot instead of taking pills? Like, do you want to just see how that feels? And then if you like it, you could ask your doctor to change you over, because like you don't necessarily want to go through the whole hassle of having a doctor's appointment in order to try something, and then you have to change back again. Like,
I mean, I know people that have done this for other medications as well, you know, like dealing with like ADHD or whatever like that, being like, oh, you take this one, we'll try this one and see how that, like, I think it's
exactly. And that's
it's a thing that happens
consent,
all the time,
baby.
right?
It's fucking great. But to answer the original question from Nicole, like, it's actually Herbal Hrt does figure into it. So I'm not a medical professional, and we're not offering medical advice here on the show. And because of that, I'm not going to get into the specific of it. However, Herbal Hrt is a thing. Like, people kind of brush it off as not being a thing. I think it sounds a little bit hippie-ish or whatever. But for example, wild yams is a thing. Is a source, I think, of either progesterone or estrogen. I think it's estrogen, but I'm not certain. Again, I'm saying I don't know this stuff. Don't take my word for this. And also, there are hundreds of species of wild yams, and most of them are poisonous. Don't take my word on any of this shit. I'm saying as a kind of almost hypothetical example, right? But like Nicole, what you were talking about before, like I think was in reference to the blocking of testosterone. And there are foods and herbs and tinctures that can be made that like do block people's testosterone in various ways. And they've been practiced for thousands of years. It's kind of a meme in the trans femme community to talk about straining horse piss, because the ancient Greeks, the Scythians, would strain horse piss to get estrogen out.
I am Greek for the record, so maybe this is
I thought that was
I always thought you were just doing it for fun, like.
But
oh no.
That's where the Hugh cow stuff comes from.
Wait. I thought that was actually what the drug Premarin was. I thought that was actually made from horse urine.
Mares.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the piss of mares, I right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Premarin, that's right. It's a thing that's maintained up until the replacement of Premarin by estradiol. But no, we don't just have to strain horse piss. It's kind of funny. It's like you'll get this with certain like anti-civ or like anprim trans femmes who are like, yeah, fuck it, societal collapse, it doesn't matter, I'll just strain horse piss. And I'm like, okay, you can strain the horse piss, you do that, that's fine. I'm not gonna I'm not advocating for this situation where we're straining horse piss. But I will say I did check with someone who is more knowledgeable, like way more knowledgeable than me about herbal HRTs, who I know, and they said, and I think this is actually pretty important information to relay, they don't know of anyone who is taking just herbal HRTs. They only know of people who use it to supplement their existing prescribed course of treatment. So I think that is really worth knowing.
But
I did see someone post.
I know of people who take just it, but like they said that they don't, and they are someone who's kind of way more in that community. So I'd say,
I saw someone had posted in here in the chat a minute back that they were so they were DIYing for some things, but they were also getting they were going to the doctor. They had a prescription for one thing, but then they were also DIYing on the side for something that wasn't readily available to them, and that their doctor was able to kind of guide them in the use of that, which is like pretty basic.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I can talk through a hypothetical of that and actually connect that up to some stuff that I want to talk about anyway, which is which is that in the UK, despite international guidance, progesterone is not prescribed. Which, like, progesterone is a pretty normal part of HRT regimen, according to most doctors around the world who know about it. And in the UK, for fucking no reason, the UK doctors are like, we aren't sure if it's safe to do it. And it's like, well, all these other fucking countries have done it, and it's great, and it gives you great big fucking huge mommy milkers and makes you horny as hell. So it's a good drug. Let's fucking get it going.
Fuck yeah.
That sounds pretty based.
I always felt confused about it. Like I never was on it.
Yeah.
Well, I was, but I didn't notice any difference.
Right.
Feels like a lot of this is like so mysterious sometimes, honestly.
Well,
it affects very hugely, definitely.
It's almost like there needs to be way more research done into this stuff, and there's not enough. Crazy.
Not to mention that,
it's like we're far enough in research to say that like a lot of the risks that transphobes fearmonger about are nonsense, but we also need loads more research to help people do it right and do it well.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Also, this is it's somewhat similar to the experience that like I've had and many other cis women have had on birth control. Like, like there's lots of different forms of birth control, and for whatever reason, sometimes your body will like freak the fuck out on some, but others will be perfectly fine. And it's like you can argue that there's like much more research that needs to be done, because there is a lot of neglect of like reproductive systems for like I never knew should you say female reproductive systems? We had this whole conversation the other day. It feels weird to say female because it sounds like but like uterus.
You could just say wombs and uterus.
You just say
there is still a huge like lack of concern for the side effects that people with wombs have, I suppose. But regardless, I think that this is something that has never like seemed to be that big of an issue. At least I don't see any huge won't someone think of the whoever with regards to birth control, even though there are many like adverse side effects of many types of birth control. It does seem like it's primarily this concern and this lack of research tends to be something that transphobes seem to be really concerned about with regards to trans people. But I just wanted to point out that is a thing that it's very like mysterious, like you said. It's like, I don't know, it's like kind of similar to dermatology, where someone uses a lotion, it's fine, the other one they break out immensely. It's like it's kind of like a black box type thing.
So I wanted to say about that someone who's a prescription for one thing and the doctor's guiding them for something else. Supposing it's progesterone in the UK, right? Because this is an example that like I'll probably have to be fucking navigating soon, because I wanted to per a lot of guidelines about how this is generally done. Like I want to not be on progesterone until a certain point, which is about 2 years after I've been on estrogen, which is coming up. So I'm going to be badgering my doctor a lot soon. Anyway, I know that a lot of people go DIYing as a route to get prescriptions, and this is a really interesting thing that people who try to warn against DIYing, and this is one of the reasons to again shame and deride Mule's friend. Another reason why like it's so dangerous or whatever is such a silly idea is because actually a lot of people start taking DIY HRT so that they can go to their doctor and say, I'm taking this and I'm going to take this whether you give me a prescription or not. So if you want to know that it's definitely the thing that I want it to be, and you want to be able to get me blood tests, then you better write me a prescription. And then the doctors do. And
that
like
works.
a whole bunch of, well, that's the problem, because you're banking on your doctor making the sensible, right, healthy decision for their patient, which is their job.
But you undermine their authority immensely.
Right.
You ever told a doctor to wash their hands because they fail to do so, and watch them like
They
have a sign that says "Remind me to wash my hands," and I will say it. And they're like, they like want this appointment to end. Imagine being like arm twisting their arm into like forcing them to like write them a prescription. Oh gosh.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So I have a friend who actually used to live in famous turf Rosie Duffield's constituency, and my friend was doing this route, was on DIY, and then went to their doctor, and the doctor was just like, no, like I won't write you the bridging prescription, which to me is just medical malpractice. Like if someone says I'm taking this and I will keep taking this, and you could make me do it in a healthier way, and you're like, no, I think that's just vile. But like I say, it is a gamble, but it's also worth knowing that people are doing this all the time as a path to get it. And actually, when I went for my referral, when I went to see the private specialist so I could get my referral for prescriptions, like they said one of the kind of changes that they've had recently in making it more liberal and more accessible as opposed to how it used to be is that if someone's taking hormones, they take that as a pretty good sign that they're probably trans. Which I would agree with, honestly. I think that's probably true.
Well, I think that's the main response to my friend that said, oh my God, don't take hormones DIY. That it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
I feel like it's incredibly far more dangerous to not do hormones when you know you're trans. Like,
well, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And it leads to an anecdote that I want to tell about myself. So I have hinted this already in discussing this, but this topic is personal to me because I was DIYing before I got a prescription. And that's a huge part of why I want to talk about this, because I know that other people don't, even though I know some people who have, and they totally could, but they don't. And so I think it's really important to talk about it, because for various reasons, and we've already discussed some of them. But what I did was I started off actually accessing a testosterone blocker completely legally. If you are an AMAB person who is looking for hormone therapy and you want at least half of it, you can get a testosterone blocker completely legally, because the testosterone blockers that they prescribe to trans women to stop your T going places is the exact same medication that they give to cis men to stop balding. So without even getting an appointment with my doctor, I went to an online pharmacy in the UK and I just ordered finasteride. And they were completely happy to give it to me. There was a little box for like, why do you want this? And I was like, I want to treat my receding hairline. And they were like, great, have as much as you like. And the thing
that's valid, very valid.
The thing is, I kept on doing this for about 6 months, and then I finally took the plunge and went to a gray market website. I won't be naming it. We will be discussing people who give out advice for doing things safely later in the show. But I went to a gray market. I also want to say this: we won't be naming any specific sites today because they get shut down all the time. So even if you were coming here looking for advice, and again, we're not giving advice, we're not medical practitioners.
Oh yeah.
If you came and looked at this VOD in a year, the site's probably not there. But eventually I went to a site and I found that I could get estrogen. And so I ordered estrogen and it showed up in the mail. The process for this, if people are wondering, is that you make it like a bank transfer to a specific account rather than like through a sort of storefront, generally speaking. And then like it just shows up. And it seems very risky, like, you know, they could just take your money and do nothing, but you have to consider that like if they give you your medication, they can keep taking your money. They can keep taking your money forever rather than if they just do it once.
Is it expensive?
I found
by the
that
way?
I could. We'll get into that.
Okay.
So I found that I could get estrogen, and I found that on the same site they were selling finasteride. And so I thought, okay, there's that little box on the website for the online pharmacy where I'm getting it legally that asks me why I want it. I've been telling them I'm a cis man, but if I tell them I'm a trans woman, like, it's the tiniest possible possibility, but it's non-zero because people do write bridging prescriptions. They might go, well, okay, we want you to do this healthily and safely. We'll give you estrogen and finasteride. So I ordered finasteride from this online pharmacy, and I which I'd been ordering for 6 months already. And for the first time, I put in the box of why you want it. I'm a trans woman and I want hormone replacement therapy. And they said, trans medicine is really complicated and we aren't we shouldn't be prescribing it to you without a specialist. And I'm like, you've been prescribing it to me this whole time, you slimy little rat fucks.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And this leads me to a concept I want to talk about, which is the transgender broken arm. I've seen this idea replicated for people of color and fat people. So you have the black broken arm, the fat broken arm, but here I'll stick to trans people. A cis person walks into the emergency room with a broken arm. The doctor will ask them how much pain they're in, what happened, can you move it like this, can you make a fist, is there swelling, and so on. But if a trans person walks into ER with a broken arm, what they'll get asked is, what medications are you taking? How long have you been on HRT? Sometimes they get asked whether they have surgeries or whether they intend to, who prescribes their HRT, how they got their referral, and so many other like bullshit irrelevant questions. What were you going to say, Keffals?
I actually have an experience that happened to my friend, which I think really illustrates that point. Yeah. So she had bottom surgery. This was years ago. She had bottom surgery and she came back home. She has hemophilia, so like her blood cells, they don't clot very well. And she started bleeding from her vagina like post the surgery. She goes to the emergency room. The doctor says, I don't feel like I have enough experience in order to treat you, and sends her home. It gets worse. She almost bleeds to death, and she has to call an ambulance and have emergency surgery.
That's so fucked.
So it's like they obviously knew how to treat it. They could, but no, it's like she's
I feel like most doctors know what hemophilia is.
This is exactly what I was going to go on to in the second paragraph about the transgender broken arm. So like the broken arm example is you just experience a delay before you get your broken arm treated. But I know from over half my trans friends that talking to a doctor about just about any unexplained symptoms can result in the doctor questioning whether HRT is the thing causing the problem, with the implication or sometimes even explicit suggestion that they should try going off HRT to see if that fixes the problem before they try anything else at all. So that's exactly your anecdote, Keffals, is exactly the kind of thing. Actually, my healthcare is managed through an app, and the app keeps on spitting out appointments to check whether my prescriptions are still right for me. Which whenever I make the appointment and I talk to doctors and I'm like, why is it making me make this appointment? They're all baffled. Like all the doctors who I actually see do not understand why this is happening, but the system keeps on making me make these appointments.
Can I just say that as a person who's worked adjacent to the medical industry as an epidemiologist, like being fully honest with your doctor is an imperative part of like the medical process. And what is happening right now is doctors are making it impossible for trans people to be honest with their doctors, which will lead to in a roundabout way, in other ways, like what like Keffal was alluding to. You can see already like the issues, the conflict of trans plus medical. Like imagine how much further it can go when a trans person can't be fully honest with their doctor and it leads to something else, like, you know, some sort of thing that they don't detect soon, or some sort of like bad treatment. This is like extremely concerning. And well,
that's the institutional aspect of it, right? Because, you know, in all these institutions everywhere, like the main institution that trans people need in order to get their healthcare is the healthcare system, and having transphobia be at the heart of that, that's what makes it undeniable that transphobia is an institutionalized problem all over, like pretty much all over the world. I don't think there's one country that doesn't have this issue. I might be wrong, but and it's so telling, isn't it? Because it's just like someone in the chat was saying just then, they're not even teaching medical students about trans healthcare, you know? So how the hell can, you know, we expect these medical institutions to actively be learning about this stuff? It's like you know, within the constraints of capitalism that we have right now, in the way that doctors are sort of forced to practice, where, you know, like they'll be saying to themselves, what benefit is there to me and to my practice to learn about trans healthcare other than like upholding my fucking Hippocratic oath or whatever,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think we'll be getting into a little bit of the differences. Like, I think that's a statement that's like basically stays true, but like it's going to be interesting as we look at differences across the world. So
just gonna be back in a second, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm just checking over my notes.
Yeah, Velvet makes a good point. Velvet in the chat says relates to probably a future point, but a lot of trans people know more about HRT than the fucking docs that they go to. It just sounds like it.
This is more foreshadowing. Yeah, this is definitely more foreshadowing of the later in the episode. So I already said this, but if you're DIYing, like, you should be as rigorous as possible about getting regular blood tests and checking your levels and making sure that everything's okay. But like, again, I've got prescribed estrogen now, and I'm just like behind on my blood tests, and it's honestly like not worse. I'm not running more of a risk now than I was when I was DIYing, because it's not like more time since my last blood test than or rather, no, sorry, it's more time. I've said this the wrong way around. It's more time since my last blood test with a prescription than the whole time I DIY'd for. So it's literally like I was running less of a risk by DIYing there than I am right now by just being fucking lazy and a messy bitch. Yeah. Mule, my love, my dear.
Oh yeah.
Can I get you to read some quotes from some viewer reports we have?
I would be honored.
Great.
So we
have
the first one.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do the first one?
So I'll introduce and then you read the quote bits, which are in blue.
Yeah.
So we got some reports from our viewers from around the world, which is really, really cool. I deliberately excluded people from the US and UK because down with the Anglosphere, let's accelerate the collapse of the West, let's fucking go. Yeah. No, it's because I already know about the situation in the US and UK. And an interesting thing is that actually in the US, in not the oppressive fucking genocidal states of the US, but in the other parts of the US, like Planned Parenthood offers like ridiculously good informed consent. And I've got friends who have rocked up to Planned Parenthood of an afternoon and been like, I'm trans and I would like to start HRT, and they just give them it and they
Holy
start
shit.
HRT the same day. So in those places, although you have to pay and you have to deal with the American healthcare system, like they have the best access to to specifically HRT of anywhere in those specific places. In the UK, I'll talk about the situation. It fucking sucks. But yeah, we got reports from our viewers. And so the first report we'd like to read from is someone in Korea. Neil.
Yes. So this one viewer says, there are not many places that prescribe HRT in Korea. Korea requires a letter from a psychologist to get HRT, so it isn't informed consent. I got the letter from a man online who was recommended as a gender therapist. I would not recommend his services, but I did get the letter after 6 online sessions that mostly warned me against transition and asked about my past dysphoria and how this will affect my current relationship. The therapist seemed more concerned for my spouse than my personal mental health, but did finally sign a letter. The sessions felt long, terrible, and combative.
Yeah, so that fucking sucks. They also said, speaking of more concern for their spouse, they actually said when they went to get HRT, their pharmacist also was more worried about their spouse and also told them that they'd have to get divorced in order to medically transition, which unbelievably shitty. And so they are taking injectable estrogen. And so when they went to the pharmacist, this is through the proper channels, to be clear, this is through their prescription, they were given the ampules for injectable estrogen with no advice. Not advice on like when to take it, not advice on how to shoot it, not advice on fucking anything.
What?
Right?
Jesus
like just
Christ.
no advice. so this is what I mean about covering the situation worldwide. We hear a lot about shit going on in the Anglosphere. We hear about our, in some ways, relatively, privileged position. But like, this is the situation for people in countries where there is just no understanding of trans healthcare. And so again, to revisit the like DIYing is dangerous. This person, right? So going DIY, right? They could go to, there are sources on Reddit. There are people who compile huge repositories of information. There are so many like available things if you can find them. Now that's the risk, if you can, right?
Yeah.
Going through the proper channels, this person went to their pharmacy and they were just given fucking estrogen with no advice, no supervision.
Here's some shit. Just figure out the dose on your own. What the fuck?
It's a nightmare. It's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
And they said that they paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for 2 visits and 3 months supply of estrogen. And they said by comparison, they also have diabetes. And when they go for a checkup and 3 months of supply of diabetes medication in Korea, that costs them $30. So the hundreds and hundreds of dollars for their supply of estrogen is very clearly it's very clear that that's medical gatekeeping again. Like, so to answer your question from before, Bad Bunny, it's much more expensive if you're in the UK to get HRT through a grey market website, like significantly more expensive. You're talking about like £30 for like 1 month, if that, like and then it could be like 60 quid if you're getting like progesterone as well as estrogen, and then you got to get, and your T blockers. Like it is more expensive and it's risky, and we'll cover this in a minute. But like you're at the whims of the global supply chain, and there's a bunch of shit. But like in countries like this, because of the way that trans healthcare like ramps up over time, from like completely oblivious to like more gatekeeping as cis people get more aware of us, like. You have situations like this one where like people are oblivious and then they become a little bit aware, but they're still like, they treat it as this like mysterious fucking esoteric science. And so like they charge through the fucking nose for it. And it's, like for this person, they're getting more advice and it's like 10 times cheaper to be DIYing. So, that for the record.
Can I just remind everyone as well that trans people are poor? Like they're one of the poorest demographics. So it's like it kind of, when you're talking about medical gatekeeping, we're not just talking about it's not even there's the added component of also just the demographic of trans people. Trans people are very poor.
Well, this is why that there's that rhetoric, isn't there? And there's a couple of different groups of people that use this rhetoric, and it's kind of like, oh, working class people would never understand trans people. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
The bourgeoisie.
Do you know what I mean? You clearly don't understand working class people yourself. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I took some ruling class estrogen to grow huge bourgeois tits. So
damn
Mule,
it,
can you read the next?
Look at it.
Mule, can you read the next quote from our Korean viewer? Oh, sorry, they are in Korea. They're not actually Korean.
Yes. So following up from what they said earlier, this is why I checked into DIY. I am not sure I will see this doctor again, but I do need to find an option for blood tests. I am also a diabetic, so I could ask to add hormone checks to my usual blood tests for diabetes.
Right. So like, they've kind of got an option, but they're still having to like game the system a little bit just to get basically, just basic medical supervision. And that really sucks. Nicole, could you read for us a quote from our German viewer? And I will then talk a little bit about the UK. So this is it's the stuff in blue, and it's after I've written here. Another viewer from Germany told us.
Oh, okay.
You seeing it?
I see it. That one paragraph.
Well, I want you to read all of this one from this person, but for now, this one.
Okay. The situation. Hold on a second. To expand this. Okay. The situation is not as bad as in the UK, but still getting a therapist, any therapist, never mind an ally, can take months to over a year. Getting that therapist to write a referral letter can take another year or longer. if you run into a bad one. And that's only the temporal aspect. That doesn't even account for how painful therapy sessions can be when the person you're talking to doesn't understand you.
Yeah. So yeah, they said that's not as bad as the UK, and that's correct. That's not as bad as the UK. In the UK, we basically have a gender clinic system. You need to see a therapist and get that referral letter. You need an official diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which I really don't want to go on a huge tangent, but can I just say that when TERFs are talking about males invading female spaces, when J.K. Rowling is losing her fucking tiny little mind about self-ID, the remaining when they want when like the EHRC are trying to push for like showing a GRC before you can go in the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
You
gotta get like a little like a chromosome check, like someone's there like keeping you in or whatever.
The existing requirement is a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which like compared to getting bottoms, like, you know, having been socially transitioned, having been on HRT for a certain period, getting bottom surgery and getting a GRC is kind of trivial, but itself getting a fucking gender dysphoria diagnosis is a fucking nightmare. And like, so when these TERFs are talking about like there's basically nothing, someone could just identify and walk into the women's bathroom. First of all, obviously cis women go into women's bathrooms because they identify as women. No one's checking their ID, no one's checking their fucking gender certificate. That's a nonsense. But secondly, the single requirement that there already is itself like actually fucking huge. But because of that clinic system that we have in the UK, we basically, like, everyone needs to be either on the waiting list or go private, and then you go on a much shorter waiting list. So my wait was a few months once I was able to crowdfund the money to pay for my, like, it was like £300 for like one really like brief appointment. And it would be more if I carried on going through private, but I've managed to go through NHS now. But like, to be clear, that's a path of going private and then taking the referral to your GP, not private and then waiting the waiting list. I'm on the waiting list for the NHS, but the waiting list for the NHS is over 5 years long. It's actually over 6 years long if you sign up today. It gets longer by, I think, about 3 months every 2 months. So the longer people wait, the longer their wait will be when they eventually join the list. It's safe to say, effectively speaking, the NHS waiting list is indefinite. Like, there's just no kind of time frame in which you can actually expect to be seen in the UK through public healthcare. I actually know through sources I cannot disclose that like the number of patients that the NHS treated this, like new trans patients that they treated this last year, is in the double digits. So it's not that they're overwhelmed with so many new trans people transitioning. It's a deliberate slowdown, a deliberate sabotage of the system. Yeah, so like double digits. Just like really consider that you have like a 6-year long waiting list that gets longer all the fucking time, and the new patients they let through that, like, in 2021 was under 100. Like, so
institutionalized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
So I just wanted to compare against the situation in the UK. Nicole, could you read the next quote from our German viewer?
Yeah. One of the problems with DIY HRT is that not enough people understand why it is important to have that option. In the first self-help group I went to, many people, especially older generations, actually tried to dissuade me from doing DIY because it's so dangerous.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional right now. They're exactly right. Like, it is really important for people to understand, because people need information about it, because the only risks come from people not knowing. And then you have this stuff from older trans people who tell you it's so dangerous. they went on after that in our DMs to say that one of the things that the older trans people were telling them was that it might come from Eastern Europe, and that's why it's dangerous, and it might just be like fucking rat poison or whatever instead of estrogen.
Extremely normal.
I know, it's so racist. Anyway, so that's cool.
I've actually heard similar things down here, because there's so in New Zealand there's a public thing, you can get a prescription, all that kind of stuff, but even before you can sort all that stuff out, a lot of people will start DIYing by obtaining stuff. I'm not going to say which island, but there is an island, one of our little Polynesian neighbors that
I know the island.
There's a guy who used to actually he was set up in New Zealand, and he used to just sell medication from a New Zealand site, and you could just like back in the day, people would just be like I knew people that would order codeine because they were getting tattooed, and they were like, shit sucks, But it's but now so there's a set up in the islands or whatever like that, and it is like obviously like a lot more expensive, and it's also like quite close to New Zealand, so it's like very fast to get it, but you also have to kind of like they don't always have stock of everything, but they have like a section on their website that's like transgender, and it's like everything's there. It's like like it's wild, but so a lot of people do
Twitch
that
when you think about it. So
but it's like the thing where it's like you can do it, but it's a lot more expensive. But but also like these companies are like they'll put more information on their websites for these like kind of grey market kind of things that you're more likely to get from like just from actual medical professionals or whatever. It's kind of interesting.
So Bad Bunny, before you read more quotes, I actually think now is a really good time to bring up the supply chain, which is something I wanted to talk about. And actually there's another quote that'll be from that German viewer as well. If you scroll down, there are two images next to each other that I would really like you to put on screen for me.
Okay.
So this is speaking about, oh no, it might come from Eastern Europe. I figure now is a good time to talk about where is this stuff coming from? When we're talking about, if we're reporting on what's going on here, right? Let's talk about where stuff comes from. So on the left, we have estrogen from a pharmacy who are making their own estrogen. That's really interesting, and it's something that people should be aware of. And basically, the reason I can tell that they're making their own. Well, it's two reasons. One is that I know which pharmacy it is, and I know they make their own. But the reason I can tell is that compared to the packaging on the right, so that's progesterone from Russia on the right, and that is what you can expect if you're ordering through most gray market websites. Is completely normal mass-produced pharmaceuticals, but from some country where the supply is cheap. And then on the left, the fact that they have their own branding is a sure tell that they're making their own. And so I don't really know about the full details of this. I've sort of heard from people, and I'd love to get more information, and I'll talk about how I'm trying to get more information soon. But like I've basically heard like it's about like making the solution from powders. So like when it's injectable estrogens is like they basically get a supply of estradiol, of powdered estradiol, and then they're mixing their own. And like I say, because the bottle is branded with their own stuff, that's how you know they've made their own. The pharmacy, I've blanked out the name of the pharmacy there because again, we are not, giving this kind of information directly. And also like we want to protect them from certain scrutiny. I will say this is a nothing thing, but it's kind of just for people who know what the thing is without me telling them. It's a funny name, and it's a weeb reference because of course it is because dolls.
I remember when like fucking like Andy and how do you say his last name? NGO?
No,
was like losing Yeah, he was losing his shit about the packaging.
The packaging rocks.
I mean, I didn't
lose his shit.
Fucking
I didn't see
like
it for a bit.
anything.
I didn't see it for a bit because the feed on my monitor is like all crusty and bit crushed. So I looked at the stream and that's pretty cool.
Fun little side story about Andy Ngo, because I'm writing this video about the conspiracy left right now. Or actually, I finished writing. I'm filming it now. And I didn't include this because I didn't want to come across too petty. But when I gave my first speech at the trans rights protest, Andy Ngo had a fucking little fascist creep spy there who upskirted me, and then Andy Ngo shared the videos to his million viewers. And Peter Coffin, who I've been writing about for my conspiracy leftist video, shared that to say it was like no worse than people saying Borger Boy to Caleb Maupin.
Yeah, it's clearly exactly the same.
It's so deranged. It's like fucking amazing.
Sharing upskirt photos of me to his fascist audience who are known for hunting down people and attacking them. Yeah. That's Andy not worse than saying Borger Boy.
Kill lists to Adam Moffin, you know?
It's just the same as saying Borger Kang.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoops, sorry. Whoa, holy shit.
I can't believe you did a cyberbullying.
I just did the biggest.
I want to cyberbully that dickhead so hard.
Anyway, I want to talk about the supply chain for a little bit. So, trans people who are DIYing in the specific regard of buying through grey market sites are at the whims of the global supply chain in many ways, much more than people who are getting it through prescription. And that's because they're relying on the ordering power of a smaller pharmacy, or they're relying, as with the picture on the left, on a pharmacy making it themselves. In some ways, pharmacies who are making it themselves are more dependable because they can control the stock. And like by contrast, so the stuff that's on the right there, someone who is just who's basically got like a pharmacist license and is just trying to make a quick buck, is running a pharmacy where they buy cheap supply from a place where the pharmaceutical supply is cheaper, and they're like the buying power of the dollar goes further, and then they're getting it to people in countries where people want medications for cheap. There's a lot of this gray market stuff around the American healthcare system already, just because like shit's fucking expensive, and so like people just order gray market medications in general. But for trans people, this is like a specific thing, kind of the world over. The prices, as we already covered, will be more expensive if you live somewhere that has socialized medicine. So in the UK, like we have like a fixed rate for any medication whatsoever that we pay for our prescriptions, and it's significantly cheaper than it would be if you're paying for DIY. But as we already covered, in places like Korea or America, if you have to pay, it would be way more to pay your doctor properly. But this thing about the supply chain is interesting because there have been notoriously issues with the supply of estradiol. And I'm sorry to be so kind of trans femme focused, but it's kind of the stuff I know more about. We will be supplying more information for trans mask people later on. Please stay tuned. If you're trans mask and you're getting bored of my shit, I'm sorry. Like I say, I know more about this, so that's what I'm talking about. But we will supply more information later. But yeah, there have been shortages of estradiol that people have like really panicked about and worried about. That like, oh shit, like what are we gonna do? Like, what if the world fucking runs out of girl pills and we'll all be fucked? Better start straining horse piss right away. So firstly, the straining horse piss thing, because as Keffals pointed out, like that's how Primarin was made. Like that is a viable thing. Like if estradiol for some fucking reason was genuinely vanished off the face of the earth tomorrow, there is an entire pharmaceutical option that like the world could just take a step back to and be fine. But secondly, the global supply chain isn't just like there's the goods and then it goes to the people through some kind of convoluted thing. We're talking about the free market. And so, funny story. Not funny like haha, funny like you want to fucking slit your throat. Fucking because of Brexit looming on the horizon in a couple of years ago, pharmacies in the UK started stockpiling loads of estradiol. To be clear, this is not like for trans people that they were thinking about it. Trans people make up this like 1% of the consumer base of estrogen HRT consumption, because like there are so many more menopausal cis women than there are trans women. But yeah, they were stockpiling it, and then Brexit happened, and then So basically the shortage in the UK came from the fact that these capitalist pharmacies were just stockpiling it. They had warehouses and warehouses completely full of estrogen HRT, and they were planning around the contingency that the UK would Brexit hard and privatize the NHS, and people would have to pay tons more for medications, and then they could hold it ransom because they isolated the supply, and then they'd make loads of money selling it. They were scalping it. No, I mean, but that's the thing, right? All capitalist trading is scalping. like we talk about scalping as a unique thing, but actually just like buying and selling fucking, like, if someone's a shipping magnate, that just means they're a scalper. And what happened was Brexit happened. The NHS didn't privatize right away. It's still in the process of being fucking destroyed. And prescriptions and pharmaceuticals didn't open up as this huge market. And so these fucking leeches realized they could make more money by selling to the American market. And so that's exactly what they did. And so the supply of estradiol in the UK was so fucked for a really long time. Not because of there wasn't enough estrogen in the world, which was how a lot of UK trans people were talking, but literally because of the fucking free market. Praise Ronald Reagan, may Thatcher burn in hell for 1 trillion years. So that's all kind of worth knowing, right? Like, those kinds of massive shifts and problems can affect everyone. Like, I've had similar kind of, like, the pharmacy refusing to refill my prescription because they just say there's a shortage when I have a prescription. Although, like, while that was happening, like, other friends said that they weren't having an issue at all. So, like, it's just like pharmacy to pharmacy, it can vary or whatever. So it can affect everyone, but it affects people who are DIYing in some ways more and in some ways less. So that's something we need to discuss. Like, it can affect people more because, like, if there is just a thing like what I just described, where some dickheads are, like, deliberately cornering the market and withholding it, that will affect people who are DIYing absolutely first, because the smaller pharmacies who would be trying to get a little share of that can't. And then the bigger pharmacies who prescriptions go through, they will already have a stockpile, so they'll be more likely to be okay, right? But then by contrast, right, a lot of people turn to DIYing when there are shortages, because sometimes DIYing, like, sometimes gray market sites have it when your doctor doesn't. So it's really just a bit of a lottery. Nicole, the next quote from the German viewer below those images, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Give me a sec. There are a few shops that ship from the EU, which is important because the customs office is much less likely to check the package then. If you order from outside the EU, it will likely be screened, and in Germany, you might be charged with a misdemeanor for getting prescription drugs without a prescription.
Right.
Yeah, so that's like similar to like the what I was talking about in New Zealand, how there's the island that it's like it's easy for us to get stuff from there because it's like so close and there's so much kind of trade going back and forth there anyway. I've even heard of people like literally just going over there because it's like a couple $100 to do that, you know? And then it's like, yeah, whatever. And like, you know, like I've been out to the islands and stuff like that, and customs is literally like just some guy that just kind of looks at you and is like, all right, buddy, you know, so it's like, you know, whatever, like, and, nice. You know, but if you were, you know, getting them from somewhere else, or perhaps sending that package from the islands out to, you know, like somewhere in Europe or whatever, it would probably be under a lot more scrutiny. So, I have heard of also people getting things sent to New Zealand or Australia and then sending it on to friends, you know, around the world. So it's like people will, like, you know, people find a way.
Oh yeah, definitely. So could you read, now going back up to the block of quotes from the German viewer, beginning, you might be lucky though.
Yeah, you might be lucky though and meet someone who will help you. If you have the energy, check out multiple spaces. Wait, hold on a second. If you have the energy to check out multiple spaces, sooner or later you're bound to find someone, I suppose. I found someone with experience in DIY on a Discord server later on. Either way, it can be hard to figure out how much to take and what. it's literally DIY, I guess. Ultimately, you have to do it yourself. Nobody else can tell you what to do. I personally decided to research by myself. Transfemscience.org is cool. Oh, sorry.
So this is one of the sites that we want to share because it's giving people medical knowledge, which is good. Carry on,
just straight up the information. It's not for like buying anything like
exactly.
that.
We're not sharing places to buy. We're sharing places that will give you good information and keep you safe.
Yeah. So there, I put in the chat. I personally decided to research by myself and get E2 pills and patches and bicalutamide to make sure testosterone doesn't get uppity. You can ask doctors about blood tests, and with a little luck, they might help you instead of telling you they can't do anything without an official diagnosis. Or you can go directly to a lab and pay for a test out of pocket if that's within your means.
Right. And yeah, I think this just basically reinforces exactly what I've been saying all fucking day, which is if we had blood tests available and medical knowledge available, there would be no problem. It would be fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, they said one more interesting thing. If you could just read that.
Yeah, I've also stumbled across some mutual aid online. For example, here on Twitter, and they @Yori Gagarim straight up asks you to get in contact if you have a surplus med so they can be redistributed. And we've talked about this before. I think it was it off stream or something, but we were talking about what this. I don't want to go too far into it, but yeah, I think we had to talk about this. This is like a very interesting, very cool idea.
I wanted to share my experiences with DIYing and I'm not going to be confessing to doing anything right now, which is exactly part of the reason that we protected people's privacy in this data gathering thing, because ultimately for a lot of people this involves admitting to crimes. But yeah, like I know a lot of people who share big, like, people have big stockpiles, and like I've known people who've like received 6 months supply or whatever from someone, and then just like they can use that to, like, they keep on getting the prescription in and they stockpile themselves, and like this way, like, trans people are really good at taking care of each other. This is why it's fucking based as hell to be a commie trans person and be in that community.
Hell yeah.
It's awesome.
And there is like an expiration date on a lot of medications like this as well, right? So there's like you could perceivably have too much, of, like I said, medication that you won't be able to use it within that expiration date. So it's like, why not redistribute it?
Yeah, well, this is so my friend who got 6 months of they got 6 months of patches from someone else. That other person like got just like tons and tons of, like, I think it's something like 6 months worth of patches every 1.5 months by a bureaucratic mistake. And because of that, that's why they were just going to people and just being like, hey, do you want a ton of patches?
Like the Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Patches.
Yeah, just swimming in. Yeah, exactly. So moving on to our viewer from the Netherlands. Tim, could you read our viewer from the Netherlands said?
Okay, so basically why I do DIY is because I really wanted to start HRT, but trans care is really bad here. When I applied for our National Trans Healthcare Service, HITVU, you might have heard from them in Dutch trans spaces. They gave the indication I had to wait for 2 years before I could come for an intake.
Yeah. Yeah, which is obviously fucking absurd, right? And that's the biggest reason that DIYing is done, is because of medical gatekeeping. It's because of the waiting. Because once you realize this, and this is another great reason to have another trans person on the stream with me today, like, once you realize who you are, you don't fucking want to wait a second. Like, you don't want to wait a fucking instant.
Yeah.
You want to get it done right fucking now. And like, I think this is one thing that really tells different people's like attitudes towards different things. Like, I've been way slower on sorting out my like paperwork and name change stuff, and that's not because I'm in any way doubtful about myself. It shows my attitude towards like bureaucratic systems and like I don't respect them as the arbiters of who I am. It's like, I'm Sophie, and I love telling everyone I'm Sophie and being Sophie all the time. And like, I don't care that much if my passport, actually that's the thing. Like, I care about the physical object, my passport having the right name on it. I don't care that much if the Home Office thinks I'm Sophie. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, actually, I've got a story about that. I had a friend who has a bit of money. They're actually a notable trans person, so keep their details to a minimum. But they came out at a similar time to me, a little bit after, and while I was still DIYing, and they at first were like, well, I'm going to get on the waiting list. And they were like, oh shit, the waiting list is absurdly long. And then they were like, okay, I will, I'll go private, and they have the money to do that. And I was like, well, let me know if you do want help with DIYing stuff, because like there's still a wait. There's still a wait with the private clinics. Like there's still a wait of months and months, and months is still a really fucking long time when you've just figured out who you are and you want to take pills to help. And so sort of like a week later or whatever, they were like, actually, I do want the names of those sites. Could you help me out? And I did. And then like it got like they ordered, but then I'd also said like, I can help you out ordering, but I can also like, I have a bit of supply and I can just give you some if you need. And so they ordered, but then it was like, they were waiting for it to show up, and they were just like, hey, Sophie, can you actually just give me some? Because that's the kind of urgency we're dealing with. Like, it was interesting seeing this person kind of consider and then reconsider and then reconsider and then reconsider again, because they just kept on realizing that it was so urgent that they really wanted to just start as soon as possible. And it was kind of a weird timing thing, actually. They were like, actually, could you share some with me? Because I can't wait for this to show up. I'm just too keen, too eager. And then they messaged me like 10 minutes later, and they were like, weird thing, this just showed up in the post, and it was their order from the site, so nice. So I didn't have to share. But like, it was funny. And I guess that's an interesting thing as well. I've been meaning to say about this, like, people who are in the public eye, trans people who are in the public eye and talk about trans experiences, often they have a bit more money and they can afford to go through private routes, and they can afford to skip a lot of the waiting, get things sorted more easily. Like, money has a lot of knock-on effects to your life in all sorts of ways.
Average experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. How do you have time to advocate for others if you have to spend so much time advocating for yourself? You're living
exactly, which is why I've been saying free people, right? Like we need to help people to solve their problems, and trans people are a great example of that, because if we can help trans people to get their transition just like sorted, so many of those people will choose to spend their time helping others and taking care of one another. But yeah, trans people in the public eye tend to have a bit more money, which is why I think a lot of them don't have like as much experience with DIYing. But then even ones who do, like I was just telling a story about, like, they don't talk about DIYing. And that's valid. That's fine. Like, you don't have to share details about your transition. But like, I also know people who like, not that same person. Like, I also know people who I know have DIY'd, who I know share all the details of that transition and talk about it all the time. That because of this stigma about like DIYing is so dangerous, they don't talk about it. And I think only talking about it can make a situation where we get the information out to people to keep people safe, and to also advocate for things like more blood tests to be available. I want to get to some really cool based shit that's going on in France, so let's get through the rest of this viewer feedback. Tim, now you could always go to a gender clinic. Please tell me.
Now,
this is the person in the Netherlands again.
Back to our Netherlands viewer. Now, you could always go to a gender clinic, but some of those require you to have the diagnosis gender dysphoria, given out by a doctor in the VU. With others, it's like gambling if your medical insurance is going to cover it, and I'm not in a position where I could just throw 80 euros away for just an intake. I mean, I could, but do I really want to, when that same money could get me hormones for like 4 to 8 months?
Right. You see again the situation,
it's
right?
Kind of like, a no-brainer, right?
Right. Like, and that's
like,
exactly
if you want to get this shit done, it's like if you made your decision and you're like, exactly.
Like, again, to me, the price of DIYing could be, I'd say it's expensive, but to other people, it's cheap as fuck. So regarding sharing with other trans people, which is something I asked a lot of people about, because I wanted to know about their experiences of just pure person-to-person mutual aid. Regarding sharing with other trans people, they said... Oh, sorry. I misplaced my thing. Sorry. With regard to blood tests, they said...
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. I was like,
that was me. I lost my place in this.
Yeah, and I don't know my level, which is kind of scuffed. I theoretically could get to know my hormone levels, but I'd have to ask my doctor and hope they'll let me test it. But otherwise, it's all pretty bureaucratic here. You can't really easily get your blood tested, sadly. So that's, another thing that we've already talked about quite a bit, right? Like, just, accessible blood tests for people, or even, people that are already getting their blood tested for, diabetes and all that kind of stuff, and just being able to be like, can we just check the hormones on top of this? Like that should be easy. That should be fine, right?
Right. You'd think. Because it's like, if you're already taking the blood and you're already testing it, look, I don't work in a lab. I don't know. Maybe it does cost £1 million extra to test for another thing, but like, come on, right? And so this is our last viewer feedback that I want to cover. Keffals, actually, do you have the document?
Wait, which document?
I'm going to assume you don't, and I'm just going to drop it in on our text chat. So I'd like you to read some quotes from, and I think this is really interesting, our viewer in Ukraine. We actually have a viewer in Ukraine, which is, I thought was really super interesting. So if you just like Control F Ukraine, you'll find it.
Yes.
And they were a little more laconic than our other viewers, so these are shorter quotes. But like, I thought it was really interesting. So obviously, the first thing I wanted to ask about was like, how available was shit before the invasion? Like,
so just read the whole thing.
The thing in blue.
Okay. So the viewer from Ukraine said, well, it's not good. I don't really know if it was even possible to get a prescription here.
Yeah. So this is another place where, even worse than Korea, like, we did talk a bit more about it in DMs, but like, that's kind of the quote I picked out. Like, it's not even possible. Like, they just didn't know of anywhere they could get a prescription at all. So it's like, we're looking at a situation where in some places it's really gatekept. You got 5-year wait, you got a 2-year wait, whatever. In other places, it's like you might be able to find a doctor who knows and will prescribe you. Yeah. And then there's places like this where it's just literally not available. And like, to return to Mule's friend, like, I think that people who are being like, DIYing is dangerous. It's like, I would say dying is dangerous. I would say fucking killing yourself because you cannot change your body.
Absolutely.
And you are so fucking dysphoric and you desperately want to be yourself and you cannot. But there is no provision of it in your country.
Yeah.
Like, I'd say that is fucking bad for your health,
Yeah. And it's like, if it's something that you need to do, then, you can weigh up the risk sort of thing, right? Like, it's like...
And I almost wonder if maybe like a good argument to make towards transphobic legislators who do not want trans people to receive gender affirming care is making the harm reduction argument, like the way they have sharp clinics.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, conservatives still like argue against sharp clinics because they're just insane. They're just fucking psychopaths. But like,
they want those people
I think
dying.
It is a good argument, though. I genuinely really do. I think it's valuable. Keffals, if you could carry on reading.
Yes, of course.
So as it, I've asked a lot of people about this, and a lot of people fed back that their first access to HRT at all was from sharing. So.
Right. Yeah, and the Ukrainian viewer said, my girlfriend gave me my first HRT, androgel and estradiol gel.
And they said they've been doing HRT for...
85 days. I haven't had a blood test and haven't figured out how to get it yet, but I'm seeing the effects, so at least I can know it's working.
Right. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, that. Thank you for reading out the smiley face.
No, it's
that's
okay.
I just like they're getting what they want from it, and they're keen to get blood tests, but like, like, I don't know. But I think this is probably a question that's on a lot of people's minds right now, because we're talking about someone in Ukraine. They actually brought up that they have been they got in touch with and heard back from a fund for refugees that specifically tries to help more at-risk people. So this is called SafeBo, and I'm putting it in the chat. And basically, it's a fund that's helping Ukrainian refugees right now, and it's focusing on disabled people, queer people, people of color, and getting them out, because obviously they're the people who have the hardest time getting out. Mm-hmm. And so this viewer was telling us, about their plans to try and get into get to Germany where they've lived before and get back there, and they'll hopefully have an easier time from there on out. But like, SafeBo is a cool organization that people could check out and I think donate to. I think they have a donate link. they help, they help refugees get out. That's really cool.
Can I ask this kind of probably maybe a stupid question? It seems like
go ahead.
Okay, it seems like we're talking about seems like we're talking about hormones treating gender dysphoria, but if you don't have gender dysphoria, DIY hormones are still appropriate, right? Like it seems like we're focusing so much on the hormones being like this very life-saving thing, which they are, but yeah, I'm just trying to ask, because of all the emphasis we've been having on like dysphoria being the precursor to being qualified to be able to have hormones. I was wondering if y'all can talk on that.
I completely agree. I don't want to. So there's an issue of a discourse between a discourse around transmedicalism, which is counterintuitively a discourse that actually contributes to more gatekeeping of trans healthcare and actually keeps people off of getting the care that they need a lot more by people who think that only people who go through medical transition are legitimate, and only people who experience what is diagnosed as gender dysphoria are legitimate, and so on. Like, a really smart friend of mine said that dysphoria is just gender trauma, and I think that's completely true. And as with all forms of trauma, like, until you're really getting into it, and in many cases until you're getting better, you don't really realize how bad it is. And
I've had friends that have said that before, that have said like, I don't really have dysphoria or whatever, and then like later on they're like, oh no, like that was like all that weird like baggage and like like habits and things that I had built up. They're like, I just didn't realize that at the time, but that's that was
me. That was hugely me. I was definitely saying like I don't have any gender dysphoria, and then like I realized that I had so much trauma around gender I couldn't even process what was going on at all.
Isn't that common in the medical industry? Don't doctors like misdiagnose trans people and say you have depression, you have anxiety, and they just put them on antidepressants?
The blue pill in the Matrix is literally a antidepressant.
Yeah.
So they're saying, take this, wake up the next day, forget all about it, right? Like the blue pill is just giving someone an antidepressant instead of the red pill, which is Premarin, which we've discussed before, the older form of estrogen. I want to say, like, I am firmly in the position that people don't need dysphoria to be trans. Like, you know who you are, and then you be who you are. And dysphoria is something, because it is gender trauma, it's something that worsens for people the longer they're kept from being who they are. And so, I mean, there are absolutely people who the first time they told their parents, like as a little kid, I'm this, their parents believed them and they got all the support that they could possibly get, and they don't really have like
isn't that
trauma
like the goal
around it
to make
on
a
the same
where...
level that a lot of other people. Yeah, exactly. We'd love to have that society.
Yeah,
totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I obviously and entirely agree that people shouldn't need to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria to
like
access
absolutely
have access to hormones, or even feel like DIY hormones are appropriate for them.
Well, that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make. Like, I honestly think that DIY is dangerous comes from this transmedicalist discourse, which is itself the thing that keeps hormones away from people, which is itself the thing that generates the danger for people because they can't access good medical advice or blood tests. And so it's also the thing, by the way, which has a knock-on effect of stopping tests being studies being done into trans people and into trans healthcare that would really benefit everybody. So it is a horrible position to take, and it is entirely anti-trans.
Yeah, it's really messy. It's like, I also don't know how, even though I agree with you, I don't know how you would make like a legal argument that could maybe convince the right-wing legislators on why trans kids should be able to access hormones if you're not like consulting doctors and using like the current medical system.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can convince.
I don't think you can convince them.
I would return to something which I think about a lot, which is like I was watching a Majority Report one time, and this viewer called in to debate Sam Cedar about abortion, and they said, in an ideal world, would people get abortions? And I thought it was such an interesting argument. Not that it's good, but an interesting argument, because in an ideal world, would people get fillings, like dental fillings? Because I think in an ideal world, people will be able to eat as much candy and drink like Coca-Cola all day, every day, without ever getting fat or ever needing.
That's a very
cavity,
strange
right?
question.
In an ideal world, you would never need a filling.
Yeah.
But is the ideal world the real world?
No.
Okay, so if it's a real
No.
ideal world, then okay, I guess in my real ideal world, people would have all the toothpaste and mouthwash and floss they need all the time, right?
Yeah.
But then if they have a
Free
cavity,
dental
they
care.
would get a filling for free, easily and painlessly. That's my ideal world, right?
The ideal
and so
world,
it's like,
teeth
that's
won't
the
rot.
argument I'd make, right?
Basically.
It's like, I would love to avoid any kind of issues, but issues will arise because we live in the real world.
Yeah,
right?
you can't just pretend that issues don't exist, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know, it's like,
I hate these hypothetical bros.
Well,
Ugh.
you can.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And it's like, I mean, it's like a rhetorical exercise for them, you know? It's just
You
like,
can absolutely
is,
pretend that things, real world problems don't exist if you're a cishet white guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it actually wound up being a really interesting thing for me, because I think I've thought about that for years ever since. Like, I usually disregard hypotheticals very quickly, but that one I've just been like, yeah, would people get, a filling or, an abortion or HRT in an ideal world? Yes, of course they fucking would. Of course they fucking would.
Yeah.
They want to
like
change
if they
something,
could, then it
change
would be like an ideal world if all these things are accessible.
Exactly.
Like,
My ideal world is one where people can just get the stuff.
Totally.
Just like,
get the stuff you need, like
right.
Yeah.
And that's like a far more...
want. If I
Yeah,
want,
literally, yeah.
That's
like,
what
if I-
I'm saying. Informed consent. Yeah.
Like, we've talked on my stream about like modular genitals. Like, be so dope if I'm like, one day I want a penis, so I have a penis on Saturdays. Like, and maybe I don't need it. I'm not like crying and I'm like, oh my god, I need a penis on a Sunday. But maybe I want a penis on a Sunday. Right?
On the Lord's
That
Day.
should be
Wow,
that's the
okay,
ideal
cool.
world. Is just switching out my genitals whenever I want. Right, chat?
That's
So, I'm sorry for keeping
Sunday
things kind of
penis.
a bit brusque, but we have one more really cool segment I want to discuss, and
It's a very cis thing to say.
and then homework that we want to set. So who shall I assign this to? Tim, could you read? Well, don't read it just yet, but you'll be reading the last quotes for us. Bad Bunny, could you please get this image of this fist on the screen? Because this is the logo that I think is one of the best fucking logos I've seen in my life, and I love it so much. This is the logo for a mutual aid group in Paris called Flirt. Front de Libération Intersectionnelle Radicale Trans Femme. It is a mutual aid group for trans women in Paris, and their logo is a little manicured hand with pink knuckle dusters, and I fucking love it so much. So we first heard about these people through a French viewer who got in touch, and then we put out a tweet through the account. Again, it's red_planet_TV if people want to follow. And then people from Flirt started getting in touch, which is really interesting. And I would kind of love to get them on the show and chat more about what they do on a later episode, because they sound really fucking cool. Tim,
It's fucking rad. It reminds
the
me
person
of
from Flirt told us.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say this.
Sure.
The logo in particular reminds me of I don't know, probably everyone here probably knows about the band Gloss that were around for a couple years, like the kind of like trans feminist punk band, and like all this shit was like this. It's very based, good band. Check them out. But yes, so anyway, we started our actions in early 2021, stemming from the main French trans femme Discord server, and as a response to isolation under the strict lockdown we had in France. Our main actions today are, number one, providing hormones in different forms for our sisters and giving them a space to learn and practice safe injection. Number two, sharing hormones obtained by donations with sisters in countries where they may be hard or illegal to obtain. Number three, actively supporting and partaking in asylum-seeking cases for trans femme refugees. Number four, supporting sex workers, sisters, and number five, being a hub for community, being a hub for community socialization.
I guess I figured that's what they meant, yeah.
Yeah. Regarding accessibility as a group, our efficiency and influence was huge. We've been able to try different sources, even to beta test several, and benefited from the relatively okay healthcare we transgender people get in metropolitan France.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all really, really, really cool stuff they do, and it actually goes beyond DIYing that we're discussing today. So that's why I kind of want to get them on the show at some point, because like they're doing a lot of really fucking based stuff. But a really interesting thing they said there was like giving people a safe space to learn and practice safe injection. Because I've been chatting to them in the DMs a little bit, and I didn't put this in the notes yet, so I'll read a little bit from this. But they said that injecting estrogen is illegal in France because the supply of it's essentially like, if you think about it, like America, like the FDA, like essentially like injectable estrogen hasn't been approved, so no one can inject estrogen legally in France. But because of that, like people who want to use injectable estrogen, one of the benefits of it is, like there are a bunch of benefits of it, but like one of the benefits of it is much less likely to cause blood clots. So like there are reasons why you'd want to have it. They can't do that through the proper medical systems. They told me that. And then they also said they said they've got like 40 to 60 people coming to their groups every time, which is really awesome. Like they're genuinely doing a really, like, we talk all the time on Red Planet, right, about mutual aid growing into community, growing into dual power, right? People taking care of one another, and then that forms community, and then people are really replacing the systems that exist. And this is a fucking based as hell example.
It's like the thing, right? Like forming community, so you have to lean less on like capitalist structures and kind of build your own structures. Something like this is like example of actually building a network for like obtaining medication and distributing it and support and all that kind of stuff. This is like exactly the kind of stuff that we've talked about before.
Right, exactly. And so they so they're not only having like 40 to 60 people showing up to their like training and discussion and sharing stuff, but they're actually, so this is what we've been foreshadowing the whole time. They're actually organizing studies into the efficacy of different HRT regimen for trans people, which like are studies the cis people are not doing. And so basically they've got like some people who are allies who are clinicians and are psychologists who they're working with. So they have like, the access to institutions that they need to pull this off safely. And they also said that they called it like dense blood testing. I think they meant that they can test a lot of different things in their blood tests. And they're basically doing just like, they're launching studies into the efficacy of different forms of HRT. And I think that's fucking based as hell. And they also said, so they're not making it, but they said that they said that they often use DIY for their injectables because it's illegal, so there isn't the supply. They use DIY hormones made by a French collective run by trans girls, which is fucking awesome. I don't know. It's literally just like they don't like cis people are trying to stop this, and trans medicalists are trying to stop this kind of stuff. But here you have an example of trans people who not only are they doing like DIY, not only are they educating people on how to do DIY safely, not only are they getting people a safer form of HRT that otherwise wouldn't be available, but they are just fucking, they are even doing the science. Like,
totally. Like, and I've like seen so many like kind of like turfy, like kind of, like concerned people that are being like, oh, we just we don't have the science and all this kind of shit like that. It's like, well, like let people do
let's
the science.
Do the science then.
Let's fucking do it.
And I want to share now, and this is probably the most important link for people in chat, so watch out for this one. This is DIYHRT.github.io, which is if you want to look through any of this on screen, it might be cool to look at it a little bit. But basically, this is a really, really comprehensive repository of information that is being kept, and they have information for AFAB and AMAB people who want HRT, and like it's also regional. So actually, this is like, I didn't translate this all into notes for like the show notes today, but like maybe if you just go into the trans femme one and just show the scroll at the side of how many different fucking headings there are, you can see how in the document outline you can actually see it's really detailed. I don't know how many pages is this. It's like 23 pages long, and that's one of them. They've got one for transmasculine people as well. And so if you'd asked me before I saw this, I would have about transmasculine DIYing, I would have been like, well, tea is harder to get because it's a controlled substance because of bodybuilders. So I don't really think that it's a thing. But then I looked at it, and there's actually fucking tons, and it's actually as comprehensive a guide for transmasculine people.
I was saying before, like it's wild how you can just I as a cis dude have just walked into gyms and have dudes just being like, hey, do you want to you want to buy some of the shit, you want something? It's literally it's that easy, people that I've never met before or anything like that, it's or even I've tattooed people as well at work, customers and they've been like, I didn't write it on the medical form, but I am juicing, and be like, oh, okay, all right, and they're like, you want some? It's it's wild, how it's it's just a thing.
There you go. Get to know it. Get to know a gym rat. That's another way to do it.
You can always tell though. It's always yes, of course, you're the one selling. Tick all the boxes.
So I'm very proud of myself getting through all these notes. This is the one I wanted to end on because it's this huge repository of information, and I think this is really important for people to see this. I'll keep on spamming it in chat. But the last thing I want to talk about is injections a little bit. But before we do that, I've got through my notes, so fucking you guys have a conversation. Fuck it.
All right. Yeah. Is there anything you guys wanted to say? Sorry.
Well, no, I just think this, with the amount of people that I've seen in the chat so far who've literally said, oh, I am thinking about this now. Thank you so much, for talking about this. I think this has been an incredibly successful episode straight away. There's people in the chat saying things like, I remember one earlier on, someone said, I'm a vet. I've been sort of, thinking about this for years, but I've been worried about how it's going to look because I'm a veteran. But yeah, I'm feeling like I'm actually going to look into transitioning now and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this has been an incredibly successful episode. Well done, Sophie, for writing all those notes, championing the episode, and collating all the information from the viewers from all over the world. Yeah, just a little bit of a circle jerk moment for you there.
That was pretty good work.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah,
it was great. Really cool seeing the comments from the viewers from different countries.
Yeah, I was really glad that people reached out, and like I say, I really want to hear more from our viewers in future, both on kind of their situations relating to episodes that we want to discuss. And sorry, I'm a little bit emotional right now.
Yeah, good. You should feel good and sad, not good. Sad, but happy sad.
But I want to say a huge thanks to the people, our German, our viewers in Germany, Netherlands, Korea, several people in France, and
Ukraine.
Who am I forgetting? Ukraine. There was someone in Ukraine. Yeah, that's right. I want to say huge thanks to our anonymous viewers who helped to the research of this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Also, proof that trans people didn't just show up in America as a trend or something, that they are all over the planet for the long since humans have existed. And so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that. I see that discourse. There's we've had that a couple times, TERFs in New Zealand, and these are like white TERFs, and it's crazy how many of them are immigrants or whatever, and they'll come to New Zealand and they'll be like, oh, all this trans stuff is just American culture war kind of import stuff, and it's okay, you're coming to a country where it's us Maori have acknowledged fucking people that were not just trans, but also gender fluid for hundreds of years before European feet ever came into the Pacific. A dozen other islands, or probably even more because there's so many fucking islands, have their own distinct kind of like gender identities for, you know, like trans, gender fluid people, all this kind of stuff. It's like these, like the Pacific is literally full of different kinds of like trans people and trans identities and everything like that. And then these people come in and they're just like, oh, this is such like a modern American thing or whatever. It's like, fuck off, like, you know, like. Yeah,
but do you know what is modern? Is TERFs. TERFs have not always
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. That's the thing.
That's
like,
true.
That's the fucking.
We can go back to a time
American
before J.K. Rowling, and we fucking should.
I would also like to share a positive trans story that I heard literally last night. One of my good friends that you've met very briefly, actually, Sophie, Olivia.
Yeah.
She had a pretty messy breakup with her ex, and before. Sort of, you know, they had a terrible breakup and stuff. She had a really good relationship with her ex's child. And so after all this, like, really horrible sort of back and forth, where this guy has just been a real piece of shit to her, you know, and it kind of opening up like a sort of like a lot of emotional stuff about her. He's actually really humbled himself and had to reach out to her now because his child has now come out as trans, and so and obviously he is a cis man. He might be bisexual, but he's got no idea about what kind of conversations to have with her and stuff like that. And so he's like quite, I think it's pretty fucking big of him. I'm not bigging the guy up at all. He was a piece of shit to her, and if I met him, I'd have some choice words to say to him about how he treated my friend.
I'm getting the feeling you don't like him.
No, I don't like him a lot.
I love that term, mate. I got some choice words.
I've got a couple of choice words to say to him, but I actually do respect him quite a lot for coming to his ex and saying, look, you had a relationship with my kid. She's trans. I want you to continue that relationship. I want you to, help her if you can. You don't have to interact with me in any particular way in order for this to happen and stuff. And I just thought that was a really nice story to share, because it's like, this guy obviously realizes the importance of, his daughter having an actual like trans woman in her life to guide her through this time kind of thing.
But, like, that's the thing as well. Like, there is like, I mean, it's, for so many reasons there is like a lack of. Well, I mean, it's not that they don't exist, but there aren't as many kind of like trans elders in a lot of communities, and like, I mean, everyone knows all the shitty reasons why that is. And it's kind of like, it's one of those things like how important it can be growing up, seeing someone that you relate to that is, like from whatever marginalized identity it is, whether it's, like trans, gay, or like, even just like, indigenous people, things like this, people that in your communities that you can, even if it's like someone that you don't directly have, like any kind of relationship with, but just knowing that these people are out there and that, they're around or whatever like that, I think is a huge thing. And it's like, it's almost like looking forward when you see how many people are actually realizing that they're trans and stuff now and coming out and being very public about it and visible and stuff like that. It's like the next generation, in 10 years or whatever like that, they're gonna have all they're gonna be spoiled for choice. They're gonna have so many people around them that have already kind of taken those steps and people that they can go to for help and stuff, which is amazing.
When the TERFs tried to stop Tavistock from giving puberty blockers to trans teens, we raised £100,000, which basically covers the transition care for about 100 trans kids. Not long after, I was like, fuck, the trans community is not a big place. I'm going to meet some of these kids at some point, and I do not know how I will be able to have a normal interaction with any of them.
Yeah.
This is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Bold of you to assume that you've ever had a normal interaction anyway.
I said that same thing to this guy I've been seeing, and he said, he went like this. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I know one of them.
Whoa! No! Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Okay, should we do some shots?
Shots. Wait, what?
Yeah,
I don't drink, Sophie.
No. The final thing I want to talk about today is injections. So background on this is that one of the ways in which the trans community engages in medical mutual aid is, as well as like sharing stockpiles of stuff, administering injections. I've been doing this for fucking ages. And to talk through it a little bit, the reason I know how to do an intramuscular injection is because Nat broke her ankle a few years ago, and she had to have an anti-clotting agent injected daily. And because it was daily, the nurse just showed me how to do it because not gonna and she's got a broken leg. Like, she's not coming back into hospital every day for an injection. And it's pretty common actually for nurses to show people if people ask, though sometimes nurses can be weird about it, which is another example of trans medical gatekeeping. But the information is actually just available on WikiHow. So
WikiHow, fucking
like, you can just fucking get this. Like, so the thing is, please do check your local jurisdiction. But if someone comes to you and they have medication and you don't know where they got it from and you have no reason to suspect that they got it illegally, you're doing absolutely nothing astray of the law by helping them inject it.
I just put the WikiHow link in the chat, by the way.
And you are being an extremely based and cool friend and ally. So I've given T-shots and I've given E-shots. I've shot the girl juice and the boy juice into my buds' asses a whole bunch of times, and it's good. It's a good thing you can do to help people out. And I know that people do this all the time, like just help people out by doing this. And like I say, it's not illegal. It's really just the reason I'm saying it's not illegal makes it sound a little bit like I am not a human trafficker T-shirt is raising questions that should be answered by the shirt. Like, the reason I'm saying that is that I think that some people might be like, they said they weren't going to give any medical advice, now they're telling us to do this thing. But I want to be clear about this. This is the same as when we told everyone to get a first aid kit. This is something that in an ideal world, everyone would know how to do anyway. And there's really no reason for gatekeeping of this knowledge because it's an easy and safe procedure that people get taught how to do and do without a doctor present every single fucking day, constantly. Which is why the homework this week is going to be to learn how to give an intramuscular injection. We don't have to read through the WikiHow just now. I would like for people to go away and read it. This is a super easy homework. So I expect everybody to do it. We'll check with the ones and the zeros in a minute. Who knows how to do it already? But like, like if you're trans and you want to engage with some mutual aid with pals, then knowing how to do an intramuscular injection is great. If you're cis and you want to be a really cool ally, being someone who knows how to do a shot is genuinely, like, from before I came out, like from the stage where I knew lots of trans people for some reason, like genuinely a thing people really, really value is knowing how to give a shot properly, especially if you've practiced with it. So like, so yeah, this is a really cool way that you can help people out if you want to be a really good ally, and it's also a way that trans people help each other out all the time. So that's going to be the homework this week. So chat, please give me a 1 if you already know how to give an intramuscular injection, a 2 if you've done one ever, and a 0 if you have no idea. If you've squirted the juice,
Question. Why intramuscular injections? Why not just like a little injection? Like, do you know why this needs to happen? Like, I didn't know about.
It's to do with absorption over a long period. So I believe what we're talking about here is giving an injection that will basically sit in the muscle and be absorbed over a long time, because like you want to be having an injection like once a week or whatever. You don't want to be having to have it like constantly.
Okay. So if you injected it more shallowly, it would be more like in your blood, and that's not okay. You want it to be like sit there and like that.
Ooh, I like that. That's
you want it to be like
Well, that's what the an intramuscular injection is. What they administer for the COVID vaccine, right?
Yeah. That's true.
That's
Really?
similar kind of yes. So like they want it to like, you know, it's like a slow release over time. That's kind of where the immunity waning from it comes from, kind of thing, because it slowly just isn't in your body anymore.
Right.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
But also, you might be needing to give a subcutaneous injection instead. So if you want extra credit, learn how to do that too. But again, that's also on WikiHow. So like, this is all just super easy homework. I'm seeing a lot of zeros in chat. That's good news. Those are zeros that we can turn into ones or even twos by next week. If you happen to have a friend who needs a shot. But yeah, that's going to be the homework this week. Learn how to give an injection, because
all right, okay, no, this is going to be harder than we thought.
They might have to inject themselves.
First touch grass, then talk to another person touching grass, and then maybe eventually friend. Yeah, sorry, chat.
But I think this one fits in perfectly well alongside our get a first aid kit and learn how to use it homework from a few weeks ago. Like, learn how to give an intramuscular injection, and hopefully next week I'm going to ask who knows how to give an intramuscular injection, and everyone's going to be like, I do. Did we set a homework last week? I wasn't here, so I don't know.
Yes,
we did, and we have it saved. It was actually like a big one. We gave people all sorts of options because we couldn't decide. Either joining an anti-war group, or in the union you joined in the first week when we assigned the homework to join a union, see if they have an anti-war committee or any anti-war statements in their bylaws, or watch the Yellow Parency video. That was thrown in there for a good measure.
Yeah, watch Yellow video.
So, chat,
it is a good primer.
Did you do any of those things or not do any of those things?
Press 1 if you did any of those things. Press 0 if you failed.
Yeah.
Spyrogal says, I did just join a union, and that's really good to know, because this is something we keep on saying, is that people don't have to do the homework within the week. Like, it's great to see people joining unions all the time. That was our week 1 homework. So like, I'm great. I'm glad to be seeing that. That's great.
I feel like we could, maybe do an episode soon where we just like recap all the homework. And just sort of like explain why it's important and stuff. I feel like we had that planned.
I think we've been saying for a while that we should cycle around on homework, because we're definitely getting new viewers who haven't joined a union and weren't there for that first episode. And I think that would be really cool to like cycle around and be like, let's do these things again.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all ongoing, so yeah.
Especially as the bonus credit for join a union was get someone else in a union. And that means that all the chatters who already joined a union and are very good could get that bonus credit next time around by getting someone else into a union.
Imagine that, chat. A bonus credit. Think about what you could achieve with a bonus credit.
And with enough points, you may or may not earn a date with one of the hosts.
Whoa!
That's not real.
No, that's not.
I completely disavow this statement. That's not
true.
But
Bunny just made that up. On the spot.
Who knows? Could happen.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not.
Okay.
Don't ever talk to me. Don't ever look at me.
Listen, this is how I get my viewers. I'm always like,
Yeah.
I've seen the girlfriend experience.
That's right.
I've been there.
That's right. That's right.
When do we assign the homework? Get yourself put on a list by ordering How to Blow Up a Pipeline.
Yeah.
Well, everyone in this chat is already on the list. It doesn't matter.
That's true. They're on the list. They're watching the show.
You're on the list. Should we do questions?
Yeah, if there are any, absolutely.
Chat, if you have any questions for our guest, Keffals, that would be great. But if you have any questions regarding DIY, HRT, let's hear it. I have a question from early on in the chat that I saved because I think it's a good question. Lady Horatia asks, are there any tips for someone like me who is too scared to do anything about my transition? I want to, but I am too scared to even come out to my friends and family.
I mean, you're gonna come out, is the first thing I'd say. And you're gonna transition, and you're gonna do it now or later. And that's the choice. It's not actually a choice between doing it or not doing it. And if you think that it is, then you're just thinking that in order to put it off. That's what I would say. And if you can make yourself understand that it's now or later, then you'll make a decision that's healthy for you, I think. I don't know. Keffals, do you have something to say? I don't know if that's helpful.
No. No, I mean, like, I agree. You eventually do have to confront it, even though it's scary. But thankfully, you only have to do it once.
Yeah, you can just change your name on Facebook, and everyone will know all at once. Yeah. Just pull a Keffals. Just do it.
Pull a Keffals.
Fly plane, drop a bunch of flyers, but the flyers say, just make your announcement. It's very easy.
Just do what I've been doing.
Like a surprise party.
Do like an imperialism, but it's for queer rights stuff.
Oh my god, yeah.
Just do what I've been doing for the second half of this stream. Make a huge rum and coke and just down it, and then you'll have all the courage you need. And then just fire off some tweets. Just tweet it.
Yeah.
Okay. Being Sophie is the best thing I have ever done and will ever do, and that includes helping those kids to be them, and that includes any leftist work that I've done, activist work in real life, informing people online, getting people together, organizing stuff, making this helping to make this show a reality. All that stuff is absolutely trivial, is nothing compared to being myself, and nothing will ever be as important as being myself, that's what I can say, and I think that probably will help a little, because it just all pales in comparison to just finding out who I am and being that person.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fucking based.
I'm gonna scroll for some questions. Let's see.
I got one here. A question for Keffals.
Great.
Yeah.
How do you think the trans community on Twitch can continue to fight these bills popping up in the US and non-US?
I mean, definitely one thing is we need to make sure that we're keeping up to date on all of the things that are happening in the different legislative battles.
Yeah.
Like, not only in the United States, but across the world. I've seen a lot of really great fundraising efforts from the one I did. And I joined, I forgot her name, Victoria. She raised another $40,000 for like a trans kid charity for the South, which was really awesome.
That's really awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
Also, I think it's really important to try to pressure the bigger political streamers, and even streamers who aren't political streamers, because trans issues aren't just in the realm of politics. This is about people's lives. Because if we're gonna win these battles, we need allies. The trans community is incredibly small.
Yeah.
It feels like it's bigger when you're constantly surrounded by trans people, but it's very, very tiny.
Yeah,
that's actually something that I have like an incredibly fucking huge bugbear about on Twitch, is that you get these, as you say, like non-political streamers who they have these, rules in their chats where it's like, yo, we don't want any hate in here and stuff like that and blah, 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 blah. And when it comes to issues like this, they just don't say anything. It's like tipping their toes into politics. And, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, well, these same people are like, and this is completely valid, by the way, are raising money for like Ukraine, raising money for Ukraine, refugees and stuff. And that's great. But it's just very telling when it's like, okay, they've never done this for Yemen. They don't do this for trans people. They don't do this for like the Trevor Project and stuff like that.
I mean, I'll say like on our end, we haven't got the details down of it yet, but all the hosts are into this. We're gonna do something. Red Planet are gonna do something to raise money for trans people under attack in the US.
We're gonna raise money.
Yeah,
like this is the best way that trans people can fight the bills. We're gonna have a marathon stream where we're gonna raise money to buy every trans person
a gun,
at least a sword. Maybe a flail. A flail's quite good. I got those.
Should I go get my sword to show?
Actually, and we
show our weapons.
They all need some of these.
I'll be 1 second.
Everyone needs some of these.
That's right. That's right.
I reckon I think that's a good start.
We're gonna make Bad Bunny play a Soulsborne game.
So it's totally appropriate then, right? It's totally appropriate.
It's completely appropriate.
When I'm trying to figure out if I'm what my gender is, if I'm gay, the fact that I don't get into any Souls games is kind of a really big piece of the puzzle, right? Like I've never played I've never gotten into Dark Souls. I might be just very straight-laced.
Yeah, Hearts of Iron 4.
Don't even know that is.
Oh yeah. I have Elden Ring.
Oh my god,
Elden Ring on a fundraiser. Every trans person in Texas will have at least a sword. But hopefully,
shit. Why have you never shown me your sword?
Much more if you donate.
What were you about to say about Elden Ring, Keffals?
Oh yeah, no, I got Elden Ring and Pokemon Legends Arceus at the same time, and I'm way more into Pokemon.
Oh really?
Why do I want to play games that make me mad?
That's true. That's a good point.
I'm actually finding Elden Ring like so like therapeutic. It's so fucking sick. I love it.
It's the best. It's the best. You're just not playing it right. That's all it is. You're just not playing it right.
I know. Like I'm just like this is so good. This is so chill for me. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk. This isn't politics. What are we
will
about?
we will pin down the details of what our fundraiser is going to be. Bad Bunny hates FromSoft games, so. She's not into the idea of playing.
I never said I hate them. Don't.
Well, you said that you just haven't do it, right?
They haven't quite clicked for her yet.
That's right.
There's still time. It might happen.
They haven't clicked for me. Maybe they never will. But I don't have any hatred for them.
But I do.
It might be fun to be like, maybe Nicole can play and we can coach her through and we can see how
that's
that
fun.
goes. That
Actually, it would be kind of fun to do like a intense coaching and encouraging.
That sounds great.
We could all because you can do 3-player, 4-player multiplayer in
really?
Dark Souls in a lot of Dark Souls, can't you? I think you can at least do it in Elden Ring.
You can do like split screen co-op in the
Chat wants to play
PSX.
So the idea we're playing with at the moment is that we will do a relay where we'll have it just because a lot of the problem that multi-day charity streams have is that they have it's you just have the main thing and then there's just the dead period during the night.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're kind of considering doing is a sort of relay race of the Red Planet hosts all doing shifts of streaming, which would be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So were there any more questions from chat? Because I feel like we should probably answer those.
Did we miss any questions?
Need to wrap it up.
we've run over as well.
Oh, here we go. Echo Baz says, I have an extremely important translated question about myself I want to ask Sophie. I'm still trying to... Okay, this isn't actually a question. Can you back me up that I'm not a troll, please? I'm sure your question is absolutely fine. Just ask your question.
Ask the question.
You said ask
just do it.
Please go ahead.
If your question...
this might be a question that they want to ask in private or something like that. I'm not sure, they might want to DM or something. If it's not something that you want to put in the chat,
you don't have to put it in the chat. That's okay.
You can DM it to the Red Planet Twitter thing, and
it's also a lot of pressure when
if you want to do that.
Yeah, it's also a lot of pressure when viewers are trying to make these agreements with content creators before things are actually said. It's so you agree that to relay this. I don't know what it's gonna be. Just ask the question. If it is
That's
such,
true.
then I'm
Just say it.
Yeah.
It's can I ask for a favor? You can ask. Yeah.
It's I don't know. Yeah, it depends what it is.
Rory Not Rory said, I'm still terrified of coming out to the majority of my family. I just know I won't get the support I need from them, not to mention the ones that will outright harass / stalk / shun me. Rory, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's a really rough time. I mean, when that's the situation, the best thing you can do is to build support from other people. Found family is the phrase, right? And find people who can support you and be a family for you when your birth family can't. And I guess then maybe you'll feel in a safe place to take a risk with some people. If there are people who you outright just know for sure they're going to be pieces of shit, obviously just protect yourself. But if you wanna. Basically.
Can we talk about trans people that abuse power? Keffals in the chat when I modded her and she just immediately banned someone.
Oh, wow.
Sean Mead had it coming. I'm sorry.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Rest in peace.
Okay, I'm glad. I'm just thought, I know it's a little hot topic, but
yeah,
I feel we have to talk about it.
All right.
Yeah, trans women power. Yeah, remember the
also,
trans
Rory...
lobby that Sophie referenced in her speech? Apparently, though, people in Turf Island are like accusing trans people of having like this powerful lobby.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
fucked.
yeah.
It's fucked. We
That's
hear about
so
the trans lobby all
stupid.
the time in the media here. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. As opposed to like
Big
all
trans.
the actual trans people I know that are all just like broke and just scraping by, you know, whatever. It's like, yeah, the George Soros funded.
Someone asked
trans.
how heavy is my sword. That's pretty light. It's fine. It's not that heavy.
That's what you need. You need a light sword, you know.
My one's like pretty decent. It's pretty weighty. So.
Yeah, I mean,
Keffals, do you have a sword?
It's pretty nice weighting
I do not have a sword.
Okay, so see.
Oh, Rory, that was the
Needs
other
a
thing I was
sword
going to say. Get a sword. That'll help.
Yeah.
Anyways, Keffals, do you have any suggestions
Yes.
of homework that we can assign our chat?
Homework.
We already
give
did.
them homework.
We already did homework.
Was I away when you assigned homework?
No, you were there.
No.
It's
So I was just blocking y'all out. I was just
the
like
injection.
I think
it was
you
the
were
injection. You're right. I was
homework
there. Yeah.
first.
Also,
Yeah.
another suggestion for homework from Chloe was just start HRT. That could be your homework.
Oh yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Well,
be
I gotta
trans.
get that extra credit. So.
Yeah, you want extra points.
So
You
we
just
fucking go.
get on hormones. Yeah. Anyways, I think this is a natural time to close the episode. Can we get some bun claps in the chat for Keffals for being so kind to join us and to hang out with us and to share info and personal experiences with us and to be cool and awesome, Keffals. And can we
Raised $50,000 for helping trans people in Texas.
50K for
Yeah,
trans
that was
kids.
awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Keffals. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries.
I hope everyone here has followed Keffals already.
Yes, please follow Keffals. Keffals, where can we find you? Where can we find you, Keffals?
I think my socials got plugged a lot during the stream. But
I didn't see it. So for me,
it's all good.
So for me, where can we find you?
I mean, like I'm on Twitter.
There you go.
Or Twitch.
It's
like
Keffals,
every
right?
website.
It's
If you just
Keffals
look
everywhere.
up Keffals.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool.
And what about?
You particularly wait 1 second. You particularly want attention on your YouTube channel, right? Because you're trying to grow
that is true.
your platform.
I finally got some editors, and I'm trying to like upload almost daily my coverage of the anti-trans bills.
Nice.
And that URL is youtube.com/c/Keffals.
Yeah.
And those editors are paid for by
my Patreon.
There we go.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting
I wasn't gonna ask for
self-promotion.
Okay, this is my stream. Do you know what you're dealing with? This is the place where you whore yourself out and you go give me money. Everyone, go to Keffals Patreon.
Please chat
immediately.
Give me money on Patreon so I can pay my editors.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
And then more money to just
do
just
cool
wipe
shit
your ass with. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Giving Keffals money is based, and not giving Keffals money, that's cringe.
Quite
so
cringe.
Don't do that. That's fucked up.
I'm scared. Stop me scared. It's okay. It's okay. Okay.
It's okay to be scared.
Well, yeah. Now,
Right.
the rest of you, let's do quick shout outs and then we will end with everyone going away and just me and chat because I'm gonna have a talk with chat. I need to have a talk with chat.
Sophie from Mars, all the platforms. Patreon.com/Sophie from Mars if you want to see my video about the conspiracy leftists early. But also, if you want to see it early, hang out around this channel because actually we're going to do a fun little premiere event there. So that's cool too. But if you want to see it earlier than that, patreon.com/Sophie from Mars.
Cool. Nice.
There you go.
What about you, Mule?
Me, I'm DJ Mule. I'm on Twitter, DJ Mule_. I just shitpost, and I'm a streamer, twitch.tv/DJ Mule, no underscore. I'm just playing Elden Ring at the minute. But you could come in and ask me political questions. That's fine. I'm also on YouTube, DJMU3L. I will be making videos soon. That's definitely a thing that's going to happen. Don't ask me any more questions about it. That's it. Tim, what about you?
So YouTube and Twitch, I'm Conquest of Dread. YouTube is more like actual like videos and stuff, whereas Twitch is just playing Elden Ring and talking shit. And then over on Twitter, I'm Dread Conquest. And yeah, that's just shit posting, but you know, like obviously, like everyone here, obviously lefty shit posting is the name of the game.
It's pretty good.
Right.
Pretty fun.
Also, Rob Rousseau, you can find him on Rob Rousseau on Twitter.
Oh, we went so close to without. Like, we almost didn't shout
Jesus
out
Christ! That was almost an entire stream.
It was in my head. I was like, yes.
I know. This is like an episode we could never. He's cis dude. We can avoid him, but he wrote a. That was his comment. He wanted to let us know that he's Rob Rousseau on Twitter and on Twitch. If you want to find him,
he's an unofficial co-host.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Yes. Yes,
it's like fan behavior, honestly.
Okay.
All right, cool. Well,
thank you, everyone. Thank you, host. Thank you, Keffals. I really appreciate you hanging out with us. And
all right.
I'm going to now hang out with chat. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Chat. 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 Chat.
Respect to the trans community.
Chat.
Fuck you,
what do we do? I want to have a talk with you, chat. About your very good behavior today. Very good behavior from chat today. Very good chatters. Earlier today was a little bit of a rough start, I'm not gonna lie. But it worked out really well. And I'm very proud of chat for being so good during Red Planet. Being so supportive. Especially me.
that you will soon find out. You cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot see.